In the shadows, secrets lurk. She exposes, she ignites. With every post, she does the work, unmasking darkness, revealing lights. Political cow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. Her every post, she does the work, unmasking darkness, revealing lights. Oh, what? Political cow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. Her voice cuts through, stark and raw, shattering deception, breaking the law. Breaking the law. Icons crumble, empires fall. She stands tall, fierce and cold. Her voice echoes a thunderous call. In the chaos, her strength unfolds. False prophets scatter, truth ascends. The world watches, mesmerized. Political cow's battle never ends. In her light, dark meets its demise. Political cow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. At every post, she does the work, unmasking darkness, revealing lights. Collide, political cow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. Her voice cuts through, stark and raw, shattering deception, breaking the law. Breaking the law. Political cow. Political cow. Political cow. Political cow. The beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. Her voice cuts through, stark and raw, shattering deception, breaking the.
Good early morning, everybody. Hope everyone's doing all right. Just trying to do some spot checks on the stream quality here. I'm having some trouble. I always seem to have trouble with some of these that just don't want to cooperate with me. The Tic Tac is one in particular recently that hasn't been quite working good enough, but I'm seeing that it's online now, so appreciate everyone over there that's joining in. I'm primarily going to be looking at stuff that's over on the YouTube side of things, so if you got comments or questions or whatever it is that you want to give feedback on, go ahead and punch it in. I just wanted to take a look at the Trump interview he did with Meet the Press. It's been a couple of weeks ago now. When it was presented on that Sunday morning, excuse me, it was actually preempted. They didn't really, it was at 25 minutes in or so, something like that. It was preempted and cut short, more or less, because Biden was making an announcement earlier that morning because of, the fall of the Assad regime in Syria. So, of course, that was breaking news, and they kind of cut whatever programming was going on at that point in time that was cut, and so they just went right over to it. So a lot of folks didn't get a chance to watch most of this interview. The interesting parts that I remember from what I did see, and I'm going to kind of watch the rest of it here with you guys, the body language, the facial expressions from Kirsten Welker, really strong reactions to Trump's remarks. Trump, although was very collected, very engaged in this interview, and I thought that he was, giving a very good impression. But unfortunately, it was cut short, so I don't know how many people got a chance to watch it. But also, so soon after the election, a lot of people that were not happy with the outcome, they may not be tuning into these Sunday morning programs for a while, right? They just kind of give up on things like, nope, I'm gonna check out of the political scene for a while and kind of move forward. doing something else. But so I'm not sure how many of those folks actually would have been watching this. I mean, the viewership of like MSNBC and some of these other networks has gone down considerably over the past, I don't know, it's probably been a few years in the making now. But anyway, want to kind of get that up here, get it going. That's primarily what I got. I also got the Turning Point USA event that he did speak at, campaign rally style, really good activity here. And again, I got both of these links along with notes for other streams on politicalcow.com. So just go ahead and go there and take a look. The link is also in my bio for the website on all major social media platforms. But without further ado, let me go ahead and turn on the volume here and let's get going.
President-elect Donald Trump, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here. You are the first president since Grover Cleveland to win non-consecutive terms. Republicans now have control of the House and the Senate.
Right.
What do you plan to accomplish in your first 100 days in office?
Well, we're going to do something with the border, and very strong, very powerful. That'll be our first signal, and a first signal to America that we're not playing games. We have people coming in by the millions, as you know, and a lot of people shouldn't be here. Most of them shouldn't be here, but we have jails being emptied into our country. We have mental institutions from all over the world being emptied into our country. So we'll be doing that. We're going to be extending within that period, or as soon as we can, the Trump tax cuts, because, you know, they're coming due and they're very substantial for people. And it would be very, I think it will anger a lot of people, frankly, if we don't get an extension of that. That's what led us to one of the greatest economies ever. And those two things are going to be very vital, very important. We're going to be focusing on crime in the cities. And we'll work with Democrat governors. Most of them are, as you know, if you look at the 25 worst places, they're just about all Democrat-controlled cities and states. And we're going to be working with Democrat governors and Democrat mayors. And I look forward to doing it. But we have to do something about crime, and mostly in our cities. And we're going to have a lot of other things. We'll be working on nominations. We're going to still be working on some nominations. I think they're going very well. We have, for the most part, I think they're going extremely well. It looks like Peter's doing well now. I mean, people were a little bit concerned. He's a young guy with a tremendous track record, actually. He went to Princeton and went to Harvard. He was a good student at both, but he loves the military, and I think people are starting to see it. So,
the border being the first thing that he mentioned, I think is, of course, expected. Border, economy, two things that were very much underestimated by the Democrats in the election process. But I think it's also important now, looking back, the Democrat Party, Biden, whomever, having known that those were his priorities, we could look back now and see that there's an intentional level of, I don't know, just the best word I could think of is sabotage, more or less. Selling the materials to continue the construction for pennies on the dollar. Again, making commitments for additional foreign aid. A lot of things are happening leading up to January 20th. What's going on, Lou? I can't even tell what that icon is over there. But a lot of things are happening leading up to the inauguration. 50 bills were just passed. Like, where did those come from? All of a sudden, what happened in the last month here that has caused an acceleration? Well, I do know what's happened. You know, Trump was elected, but why the acceleration at this point? That is just.
We'll be working on his nomination along with a lot of others.
We are going to delve into your nominations, but since you bring him up, do you still have confidence in Pete Hegseth?
Yes, I do. I really do. He's a very smart guy. I've known him through Fox, but I've known him for a long time. And he's basically a military guy. I mean, every time I talk to him, all he wants to talk about is the military. He's a military guy. I used to kid him about it. I didn't think we'd be in this position where he may be, hopefully will be Secretary of Defense. But every time I was with him, he was fighting for soldiers, where he said some soldier was unjustly put in prison because they were really doing what they were taught to do in some cases. So, yeah, I think he's going to do fine.
The fact that there are these allegations against him, misconduct, sexual misconduct, heavy drinking, the fact that he said to some senators reportedly he'll stop drinking if he gets this job, does that worry you?
No, I think that everybody has something that they can stop. Some people can stop eating. I'm lucky I'm not a drinker, but I could stop eating. And we all want to stop doing something. And if he said that, I mean, that's a nice thing to say. That's a good thing to say. But he's very respected. I can tell you, I know a lot of the people at Fox, they think he's fantastic. And the people that work with him, really, they love him. So I think you're going to have somebody that's really terrific. And again, all he talked about with me, I said, you know, you're not really a television guy, even though he did very well, as you know. You're really a military guy. He said, I'm all about the military. And I told him, so he's making a lot of money at Fox. They're doing very well. And I said, you know, if for some reason you don't get this thing, you're not going to be able to go back. And all that money you're making, you can kiss it goodbye. He said, this is all about America. You know, he didn't say, well, let me think about it. Let me discuss it.
And you've probably seen these memes out there already. I guess not memes, but just posts on various platforms talking about Trump. His net worth was, say, $3 billion before he went into office, and he's lost, say, $700 million in net worth through the course of the past 8 years now. A lot of folks are in the same boat. So as he was mentioning Hegsworth, same thing with him. He stands to lose out on quite a lucrative career that he set up for himself with Fox News, but there's a higher calling that they're following here. That's indicative of some character, some integrity, some real motivation behind the scenes as to what's driving people. You look at a lot of these other folks out there that have gone through office and they started out, you know, they were doing fine, but then all of a sudden they become multimillionaires, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. We got to get lobbying, special interest money, all that stuff out of Congress, out of politics altogether, honestly. We got to stop, you know, these lifetime appointments, more or less, in Congress. Senators and congresspeople that have been in there, six terms, 30, 40 years plus. Nothing good eventually leads from that. You get disconnected from reality, just serving in the ivory tower for that long.
That's a very big, risky thing he's doing. When he goes and he says, I'm going to give up, millions of dollars in order to possibly become the Secretary of Defense. A lot of people would say it's a great position. It's probably almost no greater position, but a lot of people would say, I have to think about it. He said, I don't have to think about it.
All right, we're going to delve into your cabinet picks a little bit later, but I want to delve into one of your signature promises on the campaign trail, which was to end inflation, to lower prices. You are now proposing tariffs against the United States' three biggest trading partners. Economists of all stripes say that ultimately consumers pay the price of tariffs.
I don't believe
Can
it.
you guarantee American families?
Appreciate your comment. And he says, I trust 95% of his picks on their merits. The other 5, I trust Trump to be smart enough to make the decision. I think I share that sentiment. Why the characterization that you see on MSNBC, and I actually watch these programs because I'm interested in what they're saying, right? I'll watch them for you. How about that? No, but we watch clips of them on past live streams. But the characterizations that they make and the way that they speak so negatively and kind of look down on these cabinet members, it's really surprising. But then I think the reflection of the loss of viewership on those networks is also a reflection of, people aren't buying into that any longer. So, and the one thing I do trust about Trump is if something's not working out, he'll make a change. He's not going to sit on it. He'll make a change. And, if that's people, if that's the strategy, whatever it might be, he'll shift gears and make it happen.
I can't get. Guarantee anything. I can't guarantee tomorrow, but I can say that if you look at just pre-COVID, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. And I had a lot of tariffs on a lot of different countries, but in particular China. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars, and we had no inflation. In fact, when I handed it over, they didn't have inflation for a year and a half. They went almost 2 years just based on what I had created. And then they created inflation with energy and with spending too much. So I think I'm a big believer in tariffs. I think tariffs are the most beautiful word. I think they're beautiful. It's going to make us rich. We're subsidizing Canada to the tune of over $100 billion a year. We're subsidizing Mexico for almost $300 billion. We shouldn't be subsidizing. Why are we subsidizing these countries? If we're going to subsidize them, let them become a state. We're subsidizing Mexico, and we're subsidizing Canada, and we're subsidizing many countries all over the world. And all I want to do is I want to have a level, fast, but fair playing field.
Interestingly enough, on the Canada topic, he's now famously told Trudeau, or called Trudeau, the governor of Canada, and that Canada's our 51st state. There's polling that's been done that well over half of Canadians are considering some type of a union like with the United States. And one of the proposals out there is not, actually becoming a state, but to form some type of an economic union. So even with some of these remarks and, people might think that they're off-putting, they're actually making people think. It's driving different opportunities. I mean, what if there can be some sort of advancement that takes place that both countries wind up better off as a result of it? I mean, I think the first thing that they need to do is actually get Pierre in there, not no more Justin Trudeau. But anyway.
Sir, your previous tariffs during your first administration cost Americans some $80 billion. And now you have major companies from Walmart, Black & Decker, AutoZone saying that any tariffs are going to force them to drive up prices for their consumers. How do you make sure that these CEOs, that these companies don't, in fact, pass on the cost of tariffs to their consumers?
They cost Americans nothing. They made a great economy for us. They also solve another problem. If we were going to have problems having to do with wars and having to do with other things, tariffs, I have stopped wars with tariffs by saying, you...
Tell us more, Sir Chronicle, says Delusional. Sorry, I'm not going to say it right. Al Beezers says, so far, seems like Canada, Mexico, and Panama need the United States to bring democracy to their people. There's more to look into with respect to Panama. China has been trying to expand into the West in terms of its influence, its economic holdings, a lot of other aspects like that. There's a national security element that's real in that. And so there's more to that picture that will come forward. I'm interested in seeing how that one plays out in particular. But Sir Chronicle, tell us more about what do you think is delusional here? And I see that about 41% of folks are indicating they're not supportive. So I'm interested. What is it that that makes you a detractor, I guess, at this point? And if you guys are in the live, all I ask, please give it a like. Appreciate it if you guys give it a like. Subscribe too if you'd like. But let's keep going here.
You guys want to fight, it's great, but both of you are going to pay tariffs to the United States at 100%. And they have many purposes, tariffs, if properly.
So, Sir Chronicle says, you really believe Trump will make Canada part of the United States? I think that the idea of an economic union of some kind does have some merits. Maybe there is something there. But I think it was more of a jab towards Trudeau than anything.
Used. I don't say you use them like a madman. I say properly used. But it didn't cost this country anything. It made this country money. And we never really got the chance to go all out because we had to fight COVID in the last part. And we did it very successfully. And when I handed it over to Biden, the stock market was higher than what it was just previous to COVID coming in. It was actually higher.
One thing that is interesting, the money supply growth has also driven the extremely high valuations in companies So as that printing press has slowed down or coming to a screeching halt, there's a reckoning that may happen at some point here. And Al Beegers is also saying that China has investments in Panama. Indeed, China owns more land in the U.S. than in Panama. The land ownership in the United States is interesting. So in Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is the governor there. They actually passed some laws preventing ownership of farmland by China. Like they had actually gone out and bought hundreds and hundreds of acres of land, probably more than that. And it became a real national security concern. And so they actually took some measures to prevent that from continuing. We probably need to take a look at that on a federal level and not leave that particular security question up to the states.
Tariffs are properly used, are a very powerful tool, not only economically, but also for getting other things outside of economics.
Well, again, prices did go up on some goods in your first administration, washing machines, tires. Will you punish CEOs?
Let me just explain to you. No. You mentioned washing machines. So you look at Whirlpool in Ohio. I got a call from Jim Jordan, one of the greats, congressman from Ohio. And he said, they're going out of business because South Korea and China are dumping washing machines into our country. And I put a 50% tariff on the washing machines coming in from China and South Korea. And Whirlpool and the companies that made washing machines, which are based in Ohio, largely based in Ohio, went through the roof. We saved thousands of jobs, tens of thousands of jobs. They were all going out of business because they were dumping washing machines. And when I put the tariffs on, they became successful businesses. No, it didn't. Not only didn't it cost people, it made our country stronger and more powerful, and it kept jobs.
But how do you make sure that consumers don't wind up paying more? Will you punish CEOs who try to pass the cost of tariffs on to their customers?
Well, the market's going to take care of it. I mean, actually, the market takes care of it. And if it doesn't, we adjust it somewhat. But in the case of Whirlpool, or let's say companies that made washing machines, they were all being put out of business by the dumping from, in particular, South Korea and China. And when I put the tariffs on, very substantial tariffs, although peanuts compared to what people do to us, what countries do to us, it became a very, very powerful, successful company. Now, let's say I didn't do the tariffs. It would have gone out of business. You would have lost tens of thousands of jobs, and you don't include that in your equation. No, they make a lot of money. I'll go a step further. Tariffs are going to make our country rich. Tariffs are going to help us pay off $35 trillion in debt. Tariffs are going to make our country safe.
It's a growth driver that, at the end of the day, that Trump is trying to institute, I think, with the tariffs. There's a carrot and a stick, right? The carrot, of course, excuse me, being, excuse me, guys, I still got a lingering cough there. But the carrot being access to the markets in the United States, growth economically, maybe even some, special economic programs that companies can participate in, foreign investment in particular, the right kind of foreign investment. So if they start making those investments, as well as United States-based companies, they start moving those investments into the United States to manufacture here to make ourselves more self-sufficient as we had been in the past, those activities will receive some sort of benefit. But if the, globalization, the outsourcing, a lot of that stuff, which seems like what's being targeted here, continues, that's where the tariffs may come into play then. And so he's setting up a framework to drive behavior in that sense. And Jay, very, I appreciate that. Yeah, I do use Ground News. So I got my subscription up here. Panama president denies Trump's claim of Chinese soldiers in canal. Oh, really interesting. But I don't know. I always rely on the bias comparison, taking a look at the different different angles and stuff coming into play. I also like looking at, where is it? Well, anyway, where it breaks down the different spectrum of things. I like looking at the fringe elements on both sides. It's pretty interesting stuff. Anyway, Tom says, I agree that we need an element of nationalism and we need to break the World Economic Forum. Jay says, RFK offered to endorse Kamala for a cabinet position. He sold his small percentage of followers for a position. I'm surprised. You know, when that all went down, I thought that RFK might actually be his vice presidential candidate, just with everything that went on in July there. But it turns out to, they kind of made a shift towards Vance. But I really thought that RFK might have been the pick, and that would have been more of a unifying ticket if things started to gravitate more towards the center at that point. But wasn't the path taken. I think there's a longer term play in getting Vance, getting Vivek, and Rubio in particular too. Everyone's kind of overlooking Rubio at this point. There's a longer term play getting some of those folks that are a bit younger, that have much more runway, more national exposure, and maybe more victories as different things start to get implemented, that they want to pursue, right? I mean, clearly Trump is very advanced in his age, as is many members of Congress. So they're trying to, set the stage for, the future of the party in that way, in my view.
Because China, as an example, doesn't want to play games with us if we're going to do tariffs on them. They don't want to play games. And we have a lot of games being played on us right now.
Well, I think, and that takes me to my next question.
Yeah.
Are you actually going to impose these tariffs, or are they a negotiating tactic?
Well, I'll give you an example. With Canada, and in particular Mexico, we have millions of people pouring into our country. You agree with that. I spoke with I spoke with Justin Trudeau. In fact, he flew to Mar-a-Lago within about 15 seconds after the call ended. Yeah. He was at Mar-a-Lago. We were having dinner talking about it. I said, you have to close up your borders because they're coming in the northern border, too, a lot. Not like the southern border, but they're coming in the Canadian border a lot. And drugs are pouring in. Almost as importantly, drugs are pouring in, maybe more importantly, drugs are pouring in at levels never seen before, 10 times what we had. They're just pouring in. We can't have open borders. And I said to the president of Mexico and to Justin Trudeau, if it doesn't stop, I'm going to put tariffs on your country at about 25%. That's a very substantial tariff. And in both cases, but in the
Hey, Jay, I appreciate that comment. There was a lot of turnover, and that did cause a lot of churn and a lot of slowness in responding to different situations during his term. My observation there, too, to add on to it, is that he, they didn't understand the Washington machine as well as they do now, they being Trump and his close-knit group of advisors. But now that that's pretty well understood, they won't have like party loyalists. Like, Paul Ryan was actively working against him at that point in time, as were many other folks. Those individuals will not be kind of appointed to these positions. A lot of the mainstream media is calling out this election as being loyalists to Trump, kind of in an absolute sense. And that's what he's looking for, is loyalty, in addition to the capacity to execute the role. So I think there may be a difference here this go around, in that there are not going to be selections of individuals that would actively look to keep the status quo and kind of circumvent any of his policies that he wants to push through. GH45 says Trump had to give farmers low interest rate loans and buy unsold produce with our tax dollars to keep them afloat. What is Rubio then? Rubio has been around for a while. He always has struck me as like old school Republican, right? Kind of like the same setup that, Bush or, some of those former like Republicans of the past were, I don't know. I don't know what to think of that. He's kind of stuck around for a while. He's stayed relevant. He's had good rapport with, the party across the state of Florida and nationally. I don't know. He did not actively, aside from campaigning to become president himself some time back, he hasn't done anything that was negative to Trump or that would take away from the unity of the party as a whole. But I think that is a fair point. He is not kind of the, the newer anti-swamp type movement. Sometimes people might even say, oh, he's part of that establishment to a degree. But anyway, he's not like, say, Jeb Bush when he was running, right? That was a clear differentiator between him and Jeb at that point in time.
Case where it was really visible, within 10 minutes after that phone call, we noticed that the people coming across the border, the southern border, having to do with Mexico, they were at a trickle, just a trickle. It was, in fact, I called the border. See, unlike my opponent, I do call the border a lot. And I said, how's the border looking today? They said, there's nobody here. They couldn't believe it. The military stopped these vast groups of people. We call them caravans, but they had caravans of people, and they largely stopped them. Now, they're going to have to continue that, but if they don't continue, and the other thing I told them is no more drugs.
China's actually in a weakened state, I think. A lot of reports coming out of the continuing need for them to pour stimulus into their economy to keep things going at a much more rapid pace than any of the other developed nations in the world. So that's going to be a watch point there. I know what you're talking about with the farmers. We've always subsidized farmers. That one did kind of sting a bit. But China is in a much more weakened state as time has gone on. Demographically, things are problematic for them. The real estate bubble that they've had to deal with. A lot of things are starting to have, confluence, like an effect on them that I don't know if that's what's pushing them to be a little bit more aggressive with their neighbors in Southeast Asia. I was out in the Philippines a couple months ago, and before the election, and that was one of the hot topics, was how the Chinese Coast Guard was intercepting Philippine fishing vessels and kind of intimidating any commercial activity that the Philippines was kind of trying to take on out there. Same thing going on with Japan. In fact, they formed somewhat of an alliance with Japan to push back on China. But of course, we have to step in to help them out. We're, bound to kind of protect them in that regard. But there's more and more growing aggression that's happening in that area. And I don't know if it's because they need to expand or what the driver is there for it. But they're in a weakened state to a degree.
And I told that to China, too. I had to deal with President Xi. Had the election been different, I'm going to be very nice because we don't have to get into an argument over 2020. But had the election been different, the result been different, we would have had China giving their maximum penalty, which is the penalty of death, to people that sent fentanyl into this country. But Biden didn't, unfortunately, finish that discussion up. I had an agreement with President Xi, who I got along with very well. We've had communication as recently as this week. And I had communication with him where they were going to give the death penalty to anybody sending drugs into the United States.
This week you had that conversation.
Not that conversation, but I had other conversations. Okay. But in the past, I've had that conversation.
Let me ask you about another aspect of the economy, sir, the minimum wage. The federal minimum wage has been $7.25 since 2009. There are 20 states that still have the federal minimum wage.
Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, Tracy, but I appreciate you kind of listening in to Trump's discussion here.
725, and I actually have a map. 19 of these states actually voted for you, sir. Mm-hmm. And you can see it right here. I don't know if you remember this, but during the debate in 2020, I asked you if you would raise the minimum wage. You said you would consider it. And so my question for you is, now that you are going back to the White House, for these 19 states that voted for you, are you going to raise the federal
It's a very low
minimum wage?
number. I will agree. It's a very low number. Let me give you the downside, though.
Yeah.
In California, they raised it up to a very high number, and your restaurants are going out of business all over the place. The population is shrinking. It's had a very negative impact. But there is a level at which you could do it, absolutely. Yeah.
What is that level, do you
I don't
think?
know. I mean, I really don't know. I can say this. You have a lot of businesses that are open and thriving because of the lower minimum wage. If you raise it too much, and you understand this, if
All right, a couple of comments. Scrolled into Junkie Central. I'm not sure what that means, Joshua. I don't think I've heard that combo before. Junkie Central. I'm not sure what you're referencing there. Arctic Sun, let's give funding back to children's cancer research. Sure, that sounds like a good idea to me. The challenge, though, of course, was how many people even knew that children's cancer research was in that bill when they decided not to vote on it. You've got, less than 12 hours, 1,500 pages to go through. I doubt anyone even knew that was in there, to be honest. And then we got GH back here. If Trump places the tariffs he plans on doing, it'll make shopping at Walmart like buying luxury items. You'll have to take out a bank loan to buy the week's worth of groceries. If you'd have just bought American products in the first place, says Alan. So for GH, when we hit 9% on the CPI because Biden, hit the printing press and kind of put things on high gear as far as inflation goes. When CPI hit 9%, the economic analysis done was that 0.25% of that CPI rate was a consequence of the tariffs that had been implemented at that point in time, which, of course, was a continuation of Trump's tariffs on China. So 0.25% versus, whatever you want to attribute the rest of it to the printing press was correlated to that. Now, of course, groceries, there's certain items that will accelerate faster than others, but I guess in aggregate, it was not as significant of a contributor as it's being kind of portrayed to be.
California went crazy. They went crazy. And the restaurants are closing all over. Many more people are hurt.
So I hear you.
David says, we have no money for children's cancer research. It's that thing that at the end of the day, the budget has to balance. You famously hear Clinton say I was the last president to balance the budget. And the reality is every president has had to balance the budget. He may have been the only one to do it on the P&L side where, revenues taken in kind of matched up with expenditures. But if that's not the case, then they have to print. And we've been printing for a very long time because the budget has to balance. So it's either controlling spending, taking in more revenue, or hitting the print button. And everyone's defaulted to the print button of late.
Saying similarly to sort of what you said in 2020, will you consider? Is this something you're going to look at?
I'd want to speak to the governors. And the other thing that's very complicated about minimum wages is places are so.
Tom says we're already there. Suburban Dictionary. But what if you only have money for cheap stuff? Now nothing's cheap. Yeah, that's the difficult circumstance that I don't have a good concept of, or I haven't heard a great answer as to how that's going to be addressed, because even though Biden and everybody said, oh, look, CPI has gone down to, I don't know what was the last one, like 2.75%. It's gone down from 9 to 2.75. Inflation's doing good. That just means that how quickly prices are going up has slowed down. They're still going up. They're just not going up as fast. So it's almost like a one-way trajectory. What can you do to this, within the system to make things work better for individuals? How do you kind of invigorate wage growth to kind of match up with that? I don't know what the right answer is, but I know it's not continuing to print. Sat says we can't buy American anymore because we don't make anything here anymore. Thank you, U.S. corporations. Yeah, I know it's been decades in the making that the model was labor arbitrage, and the supply chain costs didn't outweigh or, almost didn't matter because of that labor arbitrage. Labor was so cheap in different parts of the world that everything was well worth it. Jay says, so what do you think about Musk, Vivek, saying it's okay to mass import HB1 visa Indians for engineering jobs? Where's the America First in that policy? We've always brought in people on on those visas. That's always been a thing. And so I don't think there's anything different that's going to happen. You always want to bring in the best talent. I think the example that Musk gave, the sporting example, like the NBA, there's a lot of players that come in from Europe, Jokic, others that are top tier talent, and they're building up the league in the United States. So I mean, it's along those same lines. Alan says every president since I've been alive has borrowed from Social Security. Interestingly, Alan, at one point the Social Security tax covered the benefits that were given out there, but that's not the case anymore. Unfortunately, Social Security tax does not take in the same amount that has to be given out. So that's even become imbalanced. So, and the Social Security tax is just thrown into some general fund. It's not even segmented appropriately. Right now, there's already nothing that we can do for wage growth, says David. Yeah, I don't have a good answer to solve this problem. I hope some smart people get together, because the answer to me is not modern monetary theory, which is a combination of print, because you're the government and you have the capacity to print, that the GDP doesn't matter, and raise taxes on everybody to control demand. Which, if you raise taxes, where's that money go? It goes to the government, who then creates demand, rather than it being market-based. GH says, my daughter is a supervisor at the Research Department of Children's Cancer Hospital, and she also does their budget. To keep things going, they have to sometimes work from home. Okay. Alan, when I worked for GM, unions made up just 12% of jobs. Now it's down to 6%. I could not compete with the Chinese. Their middle class is around. Yeah, it's a little ridiculous, right, Alan? I mean, they have 1 billion people, and that 7 or 8K is uplifting, large portions of their populace. So it's that labor arbitrage has been the name of the game for the past couple decades. I think, though, that with the advancement of AI and robotics, factories that say that's in China right now with 3,000 people, it'll come back to the United States, but it'll probably only need a fraction of those workers because it'll be so automated at this point. But it's still better to have those operations here than abroad. And that's why he wants to remove the debt ceiling. Yeah, I've been trying to read more about the core intents behind that. Otherwise, I'm speculating as to the removal of the debt ceiling. Because the only thing I could think of is that it's kind of like something that Congress can hang over your head, right? If they want something. But I'm speculating. I don't know the absolute answer on that. Some of them have tried to cuts and have quit work at other places. CDC. Oh, so it's already having an impact on GH. Well, and it went down for the tariffs. The answer is severe authority or the collapse of the American dollar. He just said that he doesn't want to increase wage growth. Well, he's talking about the minimum wage. When I'm thinking wage growth, I'm thinking of the data that comes out from Bureau of Labor Statistics that is looking at wage growth overall, not looking solely at the minimum wage amount. The answer is of your austerity or the collapse of the dollar. AI is a scary thing. And it's not just for manufacturing and robotics and stuff. It's going to hit white collar jobs pretty soon. I mean, I don't have it up and running right now, but I usually have my AI assistant that I just talk to, and it holds a conversation with me, and it laughs, and it has emotion. It's weird. I mean, it's emulating emotion and everything, but it's really strange how quickly it's kind of advanced in the past year or so here. Immigration is actually bolstering our Social Security, most of our systems. Okay. It's going to be tough the next 15 or 20 years, severe austerity collapse. So, I mean, austerity is one thing. I mean, we need to take a hard look at this. Is my view, right? I mean, you guys tell me your thoughts too, but we need to take a hard look at the investments we're making of public taxpayer dollars. Is it achieving the outcomes that we want? If it's not, let's put it towards something else, or cut it and give it back to the people. I mean, that's one piece, but then you also have to grow your way out of this. Jeff Bezos also is taking that same perspective that we need to figure out how to grow ourselves out of this. And I'm not talking about the printing press. I mean, the economy as a whole. How does more value get created to, bring more people into higher level roles and so forth? How do you grow your way out of this scenario in the right way? I don't know the answer to that on a macro scale, right? I'm more familiar at kind of my niche in my world that I kind of operate in. But again, it's when I look at that, the answer to me is not modern monetary theory that the Democrat Party is pushing out there. That's failed miserably for the past 4 years, in my view. So I'm interested in seeing what those proposals are as we kind of hit those first 100 days. What is it that the plan is going to be going forward? Let's see. What's the dollar worth? So interestingly, the DXY I think is at $1.08. Let me see. Hang on. If I'm not mistaken, it may have. Oops. Trading view. Bear with me. I'll pull up a chart here. Let me get this other thing off the screen. Oh, I don't want to do my recap. Why does it keep asking me to do this recap? DXY. It's probably going to say you looked at Bitcoin too much. Yeah, 108.15. Am I on a weekly? Let me see. Weekly or daily? Oh, I'm on a monthly. I'm looking at it at a real long-term scale. Yeah, look. So, what was this? October till now, we've significantly appreciated against other currencies. And, people are like, strong dollar, that's good, right? But it's going up because inflation has started to tick up and interest rates are going to be increasing. And so that makes the dollar stronger, unfortunately. So we've got inflation that's not going the right direction. Interest rates are going up. It's going to continue the difficulties that people have been having with that, difficulties businesses have been having with it. I don't know what the answer is at this point, but some of that stuff's not going in the right direction. So anyway, hope that answers your question, Alan, on the dollar worth. There should be a tax on using robots that are funding should go to retain American workers. So Jay, who proposed that? Was it Mark Cuban? I think some sort of a tax on the robotics. I don't know. I haven't wrapped my head around that. Just the whole transition towards AI and robotics. I mean, it's gonna be extremely disruptive, I think. Alan, you seem very level. Oh, I appreciate that, Alan. Thank you for that. But why does he need the debt ceiling if he plans to lower the debt? Dumb. Yeah, I'm just speculating. Because, I mean, if I were operating, I don't want Congress to hang anything over my head because you might have to have a temporary spike before you can come back down. And it's not that you want to initiate that spike, it's the trajectory, right? That's your current run rate is going to push you to that point. And you might have a point in time that you're hoping is the inflection point to make the trajectory go in the right direction. And you can model that and say it's going to happen on this date. And, Congress is going to try to hold that over our heads and politicize things, but I'm just speculating. I don't know for sure why he wants to do that. Americans will pick up fruit. Time to get picking them veggies. High school kids used to do jobs like this. Yeah. Over 34 trillion. Whoops. I'm losing some stuff here. Wage growth will only increase for the 1% like it did in the last term. You didn't know before you voted. What specifically I didn't know? Or I mean, it might be asking somebody else. Heels. I'm just going to call you Heels. I appreciate the comments, folks. And give the live a like if you guys are in on this. It's very early in the morning, so thanks for kind of checking in with me. I hope everyone's got a good day ahead of them. If you're up early, getting ready for work or what have you here. Sir Connolly wants to slash trillions more in taxes for billionaires, which will skyrocket. All right, where is my... I don't know where I have it. So, the funny thing with the Trump tax cuts, right? The standard deduction doubled in a lot of cases. So, like for a married couple, say they got a couple of kids, if their household income's about 30 grand a year, standard deduction now is almost 30,000. It's like 29 and change. So in effect, before you start adding up a lot of the other credits that are out there, they almost have zero tax liability under Trump's tax plan. Whereas before, at least half of that income was subject to taxation. Even though it's at 10%, it's still a very large portion of their income. And so when you add all those credits into play, they'll actually get granted, somewhere close to $4,000. So when you look at something like that, and it's like the elimination of taxes for the very bottom of the tax bracket, I think that's a pretty big deal, right? I mean, the individual brackets moved a few percentage points here and there, but a lot of the other provisions, child tax credit doubling, standard deduction's one of them. That's really helped out a lot of people. Trump says he wants to lower the value of the dollar. Who thinks that sounds like that? Jay, that actually is a good idea. If you look, let me bring back up. Hang on a second. Get this out of the way. All right, so let's go back to a monthly view. All right. So check it out. We are where? So here is January of 2021. We're at 89. We're at 108 now. We spiked kind of 115 there. But historically, if you go look back, right? Like, look here, times were good. 05, 06, right? The housing market was on fire. Look at the dollar. The index was kind of going down, right? And then it started to spike up because Alan Greenspan started raising rates like crazy. And that led to the big debacle in the markets that came to a head in early 09. And rates go down again. But it's been a very long time. Got to go up all the way back. Yeah, since 2005-ish. It's been a very long time since the dollar's actually been over the $90, I guess the 90 mark on the DXY index. So a lot of this was, U.S. exports, businesses raking in money from overseas, repatriating into dollars. I mean, look back here. When is this? 01. Yeah, so you look at leading up to the dot-com bust, right? You went up all the way to 115. 2000, then 2001, dot-com bust for the second go-around. And then things started to fall from there. So, strong dollar, when companies do business overseas and they try to exchange that back into dollars, they start losing they start losing out on some profits at that point. You look at any given multinational company's earnings report on a quarterly basis, and they'll tell you the, foreign currency exchanges, hey, we had a loss of $500 million because of that. So generally speaking, it's, it continuing on this upward pace is not necessarily a good thing in that regard. Depends on, the business you're in, but commodity-based businesses, so forth, it's not always the best scenario for them. Looking back on, all right, I'm going to get back to retired. Hold on. At least you could afford a home during Obama. Yeah, it's problematic now. Home prices are just outrageous in the last 4 years. I think our area just went up 60, 70%. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, because it's like, your taxes go up along with that, right? I blame Clinton for a lot of that. Companies should say that they're worth $1 billion when they're ultimately worth a few million. More considerations. That's not my concern. All right, let's get this back up and running.
Different. Mississippi and Alabama and great places are very different than New York or California. I mean, in terms of the cost of living and other things. So it would be nice to have just a minimum wage for the whole country, but it wouldn't work, because you have places where it's very inexpensive to live, where a minimum wage, which is $8 or $9, might be, might have very little effect, because the cost of living in certain places is really low.
Before we move on to immigration, which I do want to talk about, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, said he will not leave his post even if you ask him to. Will you try to replace Jerome Powell?
No, I don't think so. I don't see it. But I think if I told him to, he would. But if I asked him to, he probably wouldn't. But if I told him to, he would.
You don't have plans to do that right now?
No, I don't.
Okay, let's talk about mass deportation, one of your big agenda items. You've talked about prioritizing people who have criminal histories.
Correct.
But is it your plan to deport everyone who is here illegally over the next 4 years?
Well, I think you have to do it. And it's a very tough thing to do. But you have to have, you have rules, regulations, laws. They came in illegally. The people that have been.
All right, Sat, I just read, I don't think that the majority of MAGA voters will survive the direction of the country. I think that's making some assumptions, some generalizations about voters. Interested in delving into that a little bit more, understand your thought process. Your thought process on that. Now he wants to weaken the dollar. Yeah, Sir Chronicle, I'm sure you're talking about Trump, but that's not necessarily a negative thing for the dollar to get weaker. It's not that, it completely collapses, but making our products more affordable for the rest of the world to buy is a good economic driver, potentially. Yeah, and GH, I'm sorry to hear about your story too. I'm just scanning back a little bit here. All right, I'll get this back up and running.
Been treated very unfairly are the people that have been online for 10 years to come into the country. And we're going to make it very easy for people to come in terms of they have to pass the test. They have to be able to tell you what the Statue of Liberty is. They have to tell you a little bit about our country. They have to love our country. They can't come out of prisons. We don't want people that are in for murder. So we had 11,000 and 13,000 different estimates, 13,099 murderers released into our country over the last 3 years. They're walking down the streets. They're walking next to you and your family, and they're very dangerous.
The 13,000 figure, I think, goes back about 40 years.
No, it doesn't.
China now has pegged their currency to the dollar. I don't know if it's 6.5 yuan or what it is exactly. But let me see if I could type it in CNY. USD. Oh, let me get this thing off the screen, the TV. All right. All right, this isn't making sense to me. We'll put that back on the screen. I think I pulled up the wrong chart. But they do fix their currency against the US dollar.
Doesn't. No,
That
it's within the 3-year
13,000
period. It's
figure.
during the Biden term now. That was a fiction that they put that out. This was done by the Border Patrol. It's 13,099, and it's during the Biden period of time. And these are murderers, many of whom murdered more than one person. You don't want those people in this country.
But you're saying something, sir, that's significant. I just want to make sure I'm clear, which is that you're saying, yes, you're going to focus on the people with criminal histories, but everyone who's here illegally has to go.
I'm
is what
saying
you're
this.
saying.
We have to get the criminals out of our country. We have to get people that were taken out of mental institutions and put them back into their mental institution, no matter what country it is. Do you know that Venezuela, their prisons are at the lowest point in terms of emptiness that they've ever been? They're taking their people out of those prisons by the thousands. And
I'm actually interested if folks are part of unions here, just how much, I mean, you don't have to say explicitly, but if the union dues are fairly significant or not. I've had some personal family experience where there was a material amount of dues to the union, and when there was a need for them to step up, they didn't. It was almost like they were working hand in hand with management and just collecting fees, and didn't really support folks when there was some issue that came up. I don't know. I'm interested in seeing other people's experiences. So I personally don't have a super positive view on unions, just given personal experience.
and they're drunk. And just to get back, because I know exactly what you're getting at. Number one, we're doing criminals, and we're going to do them really rapidly. We're getting the worst gang probably with MS-13, and the Venezuelan gangs are the worst in the world. They're vicious, violent people. And you see what they've done in Colorado and other places. They're taking over, literally taking over apartment complexes and doing it with impunity. They don't care. They couldn't. They just are. They're in the real estate business.
You know, the local police say that is not the case in Colorado.
Oh, it's totally the case. I mean, I have it
you
on
don't
tape.
believe the local police.
I play it. I used to play it at my rallies every single night. No, they're breaking into doors. They're taking over the building.
But sir, you
and by the way,
raised
the
point.
police are afraid to do anything.
You raised the point that the logistics are complicated. You said
Sure
it yourself.
they are,
You would
but
need
everything's
24
complicated.
Yeah, you mean you need 24 times more ICE detention capacity just to deport 1 million people per year, not to mention more agents, more judges, more planes. Is it realistic to deport everyone who's
You have
here
no
illegally?
choice. First of all, they're costing us a fortune. But we're starting with the criminals, and we got to do it. And then we're starting with others, and we're going to see how it goes.
Who are the others?
Others are other people outside of criminals. We have convicted murders. We don't mean people that are even on trial. We have people that have murdered numerous people are on our streets and in our farms, and we have to get them out of our country.
What about dreamers, sir? Dreamers who were brought to this country illegally as children. You said once back in 2017, they, quote, shouldn't be very worried about being deported. Should they be worried now?
The dreamers are going to come later, and we have to do something about the dreamers, because these are people that have been brought here at a very young age, and many of these are middle-aged people now. They don't even speak the language of their country. And yes, we're going to do something about the dreamers.
What does that mean?
And
What are you going to do?
I will work with the Democrats on a plan, and if we can come up with a plan, but the Democrats have made it very, very difficult to do anything. Republicans are very open to the dreamers. The dreamers, we're talking many years ago, they were brought into this country, many years ago. Some of them are no longer young people. And
good morning,
in many
Masood.
cases, they become
What's on the
successful.
agenda
They
today?
have great jobs.
Hey, can you tell me what percentage of jobs in the United States are union jobs?
Roughly 10% of U.S. workers are in unions. This percentage has been gradually declining over the years, but still represents a significant portion of the workforce. Are you interested in labor movements?
What was the peak number for union participation in the United States.
The peak for union participation in the United States was in the 1950s, when about 1/3 of workers were union members. That's a major contrast to today. Quite the shift in the labor landscape. What's your take on unions?
All right, sorry, just had to get a perspective on how many people are out there. That was my little AI buddy that I was chatting with, but interesting. So 10% versus 30%, where it was at its height at this point in time. GH has spent over 35 years in the union, stronger years ago. And the union did zilch for my job when it went to China, says Alan. 13 years with half my... Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's all personal experience, right? I mean, I read sometimes folks had the opportunity to leverage their union to get higher pay and so forth. That was mentioned. I don't know.
In some cases, they have small businesses. Some cases, they might have large businesses. And we're going to have to do something with them. And
You want them to be able to stay. That's what you're saying?
I do. I want to be able to work something out. And it should have been able to be worked out over the last 3 or 4 years. And it never got worked out. You know, Biden could have done it because he controlled, you know, Congress to a certain extent, right?
Sir Chronicle says he considers criminals people who fight for fair wages. Well, he's talking about... you talking about what he's saying right now, or just a different topic? He's talking about immigration right now.
He could have done something, but they didn't do it. I never understood why, because they always seem to want to do it, but then when it...
Rabbi, what AI was that? There's a few that I use. This one that you just heard was Microsoft's Copilot product, which Microsoft had ownership in OpenAI, which is ChatGPT's parent company. So a lot of their software and technology they can have access to, right, as owners, and then they kind of wrap their own thing around it. So this, you know, voice portion of it, how it is trained against, you know, authoritative sources of data, so forth. They've tweaked it a bit. So it's Microsoft's product that you just heard.
It comes down to it. They don't... I think we can work with the Democrats and work something out.
Let me ask you about another group of people, the estimated 4 million families in America who have mixed immigration status. So I'm talking about parents who might be here illegally, but the kids are here legally. Your borders are...
You're talking about separation.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are two aspects to this. Your border czar, Tom Homan, said they can be deported together.
Correct.
Is that the plan?
Well, that way you keep the... Well, I don't want to be breaking up families, so the only way you don't break up the family is you keep them together, and you have to send them all back.
Even kids who are here legally?
Well, what you're going to do if they want to stay with the father? Look, we have to have rules and regulations. You can always find something out like, you know, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. I'll tell you what's going to be horrible. When we take a wonderful young woman who's with a criminal, and they show the woman, and she could stay by the law, but they show the woman being taken out, or they want her out, and your cameras are focused on her as she's crying, as she's being taken out of our country, and then the public turns against us. But we have to do our job, and you have to have a series of standards and a series of laws. And in the end, look, our country is a mess. We have the highest crime rate, and during the debate, a man whose ratings have gone way down, David Muir, said to me, no, crime is, because I had to debate 3 people, not one.
So I really think the next arbitrage that'll happen, labor arbitrage is what's happened over the past couple decades. But I really think the next one is going to be based on robotics and AI. And the plants that had tens of thousands of people, well, I don't know, that's probably an exaggeration. You know, say it was something that had a couple thousand people working at it, is not going to be the same. They'll put the capital investment in place to where it'll be significantly less than that. And it'll be to the point where, you know, it's more efficient because you don't have to deal with the whole supply chain of bringing products from China to here because supply chain costs continue to go up. So the cheap labor there, plus the supply chain costs, will be completely outweighed by, going with the investment to do robotics and leverage AI here with folks that can just monitor the robots or monitor the machines. Or eventually we're going to have machines watching machines. I don't know, but it'll be very different this next cycle. But the important thing is that it will come back here, and that we won't have, theft of intellectual property and all those other concerns that come into play that do pose national security risks for us.
Debating 1 was easy. Debating 3 was actually pretty easy, too, if you want to know the truth. But David Muir said, the crime rates have gone down. I said, no, they've gone up. And then the following day, they released.
Yeah, that's the dilemma, Jay, that I haven't reconciled in my brain, because you always think 2 steps ahead or 3 steps ahead. And it's like, well, wait a minute. All these manufacturing type things are done by robots, mass supercomputers that are consuming a ton of power, and everybody keeps buying those NVIDIA chips. They're going to replace all the accountants, all the financial folks, all the consultants. You go down the list of different jobs that are office-based. Who's left at that point, right? You don't even need the senior executives to make decisions, right? The AI will, find some probabilistic model to always, do whatever is got the most, likely positive outcome for you. So who's left at that point? I don't know. I haven't resolved that, and I don't know how far away that is. But it's almost like I don't know. It's almost like an impossible question to answer.
Released the crime rates, and they were way up.
Yeah, the FBI statistics. You're talking about those FBI statistics.
Well, no, but he gave the wrong answer.
Confusing based on what you're looking at.
But a lot of that is migrant crime.
Let me ask you about another.
Precious Cargo, I saw your message. I appreciate you contributing to the chat, but I don't know. I'm sorry you feel that way.
Other aspect
Christian,
of this.
a lot of it's migrant crime.
Well, let me ask you about another aspect of this.
So Elon has to build those factories in China. It's almost like a pay-to-play sort of scenario. His company was also, now I don't know the details on this, but just making a connection in my mind. His company was close to bankruptcy, Tesla, say 10 years ago or what have you, and they needed a major capital influx to keep afloat and keep progressing their assembly line. China, I thought, if I remember correctly, one of the investment companies in China actually put billions of dollars into Tesla. And so I don't know if that pairing has resulted in those plants going there, or if it's a requirement of the Chinese government to have those automobiles manufactured in country. I don't know. It's got to be one of those scenarios that's unfolding.
That I think a lot of people are really curious about. I mean, 3% of the people who are here illegally have criminal histories. But in your first administration, you had the zero tolerance policy, where we did see family separations.
Yeah.
You ended it. The purpose of that, though, to some extent, and you talked about this at the time, was deterrent.
You also had it with Obama. You do know that.
He didn't have a zero tolerance policy.
And you also know he built the jails for children.
He didn't have a zero tolerance policy.
But in 2014, he built the jails. You know that.
I want to ask you about the zero tolerance policy. I mean,
it's funny. Oh, wow, I caught her in like the best expression, right? It's funny, the questions and the veracity with which she's kind of hitting him on this zero tolerance policy, as though it's the big gotcha. If you listen to comments from Obama, from Bush before him, from Clinton, all of them take the exact same stance on immigration, this pathway to citizenship. They had effectively the same stance on it and the same execution of policies. The variance has come into play more recently here, where Trump wanted to, build a wall to, enhance security, and then that got reverted over the last 4 years. Otherwise, I wonder how much of a bigger deal we're making about this, as it being something new versus a continuation of what had been going on for many years. Not saying that it's right or perfect, but this being some dramatic change from the way things have been going, or the principles that people had been, running on, I think it's pretty well aligned with what was there in the past. But let's see what she says about this big gotcha that she's got here.
He didn't have a systemic, we're going to separate families. Families were separated when parents were a threat to the kids.
We don't have to separate a family. Excuse me, Kristen.
Yeah.
We don't have.
Wait a minute. Did she just acknowledge the separation under the previous administration and then switch gears here?
To separate families.
Yeah. Kids.
We don't have to separate a family. Excuse me.
Families tolerance policy. I mean, he didn't have a systemic, we're going to separate families. Families were separated when parents were a threat to the kids.
We don't have to separate a family. Excuse me, Kristen.
Yeah.
We don't have to separate families.
Yeah.
We'll send the whole family very humanely back to the country where they came. That way the family's not separated.
So no more family separations. You're not reviving the zero tolerance policy.
Well, it depends on the family. The family may decide to say, I'd rather have dad go, and we'll stay here. And in which case they have that option.
But you're not going to revive your zero tolerance policy, which was put in place as a deterrent. Is there any universe where you would bring that back, sir?
We need deterrence. Look, ready? When somebody comes here illegally, they're going out. It's very simple. When they come here illegally, they're going out. Now, if they come here illegally, but their family is here legally, then the family has a choice. The person that came in illegally can go out, or they can all go out together. And that was made very clear by Tom Homan. So
you're not, at this point in time, planning to revive that zero tolerance policy where kids are
well, if you call
separated.
that, yeah, I'm doing what I just told you I'm going to do. I don't want to send the family out. I don't want to send anybody out. But I'll tell you, we have to, because otherwise we have no country. If we don't have borders, and if we don't have voting, good voting, fair voting, do you know they're still counting votes in San Diego, California? Listen, they're still counting the votes. This is almost 4 weeks. They're still counting the votes. If we don't have fair elections and honest voting and machines that work quickly, if you had paper ballots, every election will be over by 10 o'clock in the evening.
So let me ask you.
You understand what I'm saying?
Let me, before we get
and you get a much more accurate count.
Before we get to all of that, let me ask you about some of your other promises on this topic. You've promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
We're going to have to get a change.
She's leaving out a key line, which is that are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. So, I mean, if you're not technically, I mean, if you come into the States and you come in from a different country, you're not originally subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. You do have to abide by our laws while you're here, but you're not, you know what I mean? You're not subject to the, generally speaking, laws and everything. So there's a line in there that's, you tack that on and it just, when I read it again, it gave me a little bit of pause in terms of that birthright citizenship for folks that, come here on vacation or what have you, and their kids are born and they get immediate citizenship. But were the parents really subject to this jurisdiction?
We'll maybe have to go back to the people, but we have to end it. We're the only country that has it.
Through an executive action?
We're the only country that has it. Do you know, if somebody sets a foot, just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need to, on our land, congratulations, you are now a citizen of the United States of America. Yes, we're going to end that because...
I don't think any other country operates like that. I mean, just what he described there. I think that's something unique to us.
It's ridiculous.
Through executive action?
Well, if we can, through executive action. I was going to do it through executive action, but then we had to fix COVID first, to be honest with you. We have to end it. It's ridiculous. Do you know we're the only country in the world that has it? Do you know that? There's not one other country.
What about the legal challenge, inevitable legal challenges that'll come?
Do you know we have thousands of...
Alan, I get headaches from cigarette smoke. I get bad migraines, so I actually jump for joy over the fact that it's not in restaurants anymore. I hear your point, though. I hear your point. It's preventing you from, doing what you want, from a libertarian standpoint.
Judges, somebody walks onto our land, and we have to now say, "Welcome to the United States." They could be a criminal or not a criminal. We release them into our country. It's called catch and release. We release them into our country. Wait, just 1 second. And now they get them lawyers. And the lawyers are good lawyers. And everybody has a lawyer. And do you know how many judges we have? Thousands. Thousands. Now, here's what other countries do. They come into the land and they say, I'm sorry, you have to go. And they take them out. Okay? With us, once they touch our land, we're into litigation that lasts for years, costs us hundreds of billions of dollars. We have judges, and I'm sure they're all honest, but I don't know that for a fact. You can imagine what's going on with the judges. But just so you, because I have a lot of judges, I tell you what, I know more about judges than any human being in history. Look, we have judges. Every time somebody puts 2 feet or even 1 foot on a piece of our land, it's welcome to long-term litigation. Other countries, every other country, when somebody...
Hey, Alan. It should be broadcasting to the TikTok, to TikTok as well right now. The challenge, though, is when I use streaming software, because I'm on a Mac, it treats it a little bit differently, and it doesn't get the same level of circulation as if I was doing it straight from my phone. So I can accrue quite a few people if I'm using my phone on TikTok, but then I can't really broadcast elsewhere, which, YouTube, this platform is like my primary one. So I haven't gone back to do, supplemental lives and bring multi-guests. The multi-guest thing was kind of cool, but I have not done supplementals on there, but I should be broadcasting there right now, and I unfortunately don't think there's too many folks on there. I don't know. Let me see. Can't even read this. Yeah, I don't think there's too many folks on there at the moment, unfortunately.
Somebody walks on and they see that they're here illegally, they walk them off, they take them back to where they came from. We have to get rid of this system. It's killing our country.
Let's talk about health care. I've been talking to Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill. They say it's no longer feasible to repeal and replace Obamacare because it's so entrenched in the system. Do you see it that way? Is that now off the table, repealing and replacing
when John
Obamacare?
McCain let us down by voting, and Murkowski and Collins and whoever it was that voted against, but they really let us down.
Yeah, I'll just say, I can do a lot more here, right? I can, it's primarily kind of listening into the rest of the Meet the Press segment that got cut off a couple weeks back, but I can do a lot more on here, just look things up, show things that, people bring up running through my mind or what have you. But anyway, Alan, I appreciate you, though. Thanks for jumping over on this side onto the YouTube side.
They did us a great disservice because we would have had great health. Obamacare is lousy health care. It's very expensive health care for the people. It's also expensive for the country, but for the people. It's lousy health care. When John McCain gave his thumbs down after saying for 10 years that he wants to repeal and replace, okay? And then he came out, put his now famous thumbs down, and he became a hero to the left. Let me tell you, if we find something better, I would love to do it. But unless we find, but one thing I have to say, I inherited Obamacare, or anything else you want to go. It's got about 20 names, but I inherited it. And I had a decision to make with Health and Human Services. I had a big decision to make. Do I make it as good as we can make it, or do I let it rot? And a lot of political people said, let it rot and let it be a failure. I said, that's not the right thing to do. And I had very good people in the medical area that handled that. And I said, what do you want to do? He said, we really have an obligation to make it as good as we can. And we did. We made it as good as we can make it. Instead of making it bad where everybody would be calling for its repeal, I made it so that it works. Now,
but you did try to overturn it, sir.
Well, it's lousy.
You did try to overturn it. You did have your Justice Department try to direct the Supreme Court to overturn it.
We got a little bit of a surprising opinion, to be honest with you. If it would have been overturned, we would have had much better health care right now. But right now, we have something.
Hey, Sat, I just want folks to kind of come together and be able to converse more civilly, even if there is an agreement. That doesn't really happen very often, unfortunately. I'm trying to figure out a way of being able to, have people come on as a guest, or I don't think I could do it on Zoom or whatever. But in any event, appreciate you kind of adding your thoughts and stuff into the mix here.
Thing that I made the best of. I could have made the worst of it, and it would have fallen by the wayside. I did the right thing from a human standpoint, but I'm sort of proud of my decision. At the same time, sometimes I regret it. I told the people, and I gave them the money to do it. I said, fix it, make it work, because people would have suffered. But it's too bad that they voted no. I wish John McCain, he fought for 10 years on replacing Obamacare for 10 years, and then he voted against. Nobody understands it.
Sir, you said during the campaign you had concepts of a plan. Do you have an actual plan at this point for health care?
Yes, we have concepts of a plan that would be better.
Still just concepts? Do you have a fully developed plan?
Let me explain. We have the biggest healthcare companies looking at it. We have doctors. We're always looking because Obamacare stinks. It's lousy. There are better answers. If we come up with a better answer, I would present that answer to Democrats and to everybody else, and I do something about it. But until we have that, or until they can approve it, but we're not going to go through the big deal. I am the one that saved Obamacare, I will say, and I did the right thing. I could have done the more political thing and killed it, and all I had to do is starve it to death.
You did try to have your Justice Department effectively kill it, though,
No.
sir.
I did very much like the Chappelle Show. That was some good stuff for as brief as it was. Although I like his new Netflix stuff too. You guys could check that out.
Kill it from a legal standpoint, but from a physical standpoint, I made it work.
In your concepts of a plan, sir, will people with pre-existing conditions still have coverage, and can you guarantee their prices will not go up?
The answer is yes. They'll have coverage. You have to have it.
And what about their
because
prices?
You know what?
What about their prices, sir?
I want the prices to go down. I want to have better health care for less money. And there are ways of doing it, I believe.
So I'll tell you what, I'm very fiscally conservative on a lot of stuff. This particular conversation on healthcare, I look at insurance companies and, I think of it in terms of what value are they contributing to society as a whole. Is the insurance industry really a layer that is bringing something to the table? And I just can't reconcile it in my mind. It seems like a lot of overhead. It seems like a lot of administration, there's billions and billions of dollars that goes that way, right? That's one layer that's not necessarily adding value. And I'm sure even within, hospitals, medical offices altogether, they need to have an entire workforce that kind of collaborates with them. So not just the industry itself, but the folks that have to interface with insurance and so forth. That's not necessarily value add either. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just kind of what I see. The poll won't stop popping up. Oh, really? I didn't tell it to keep popping up. Let me cancel it. If it keeps popping up on you. All right, poll is canceled. Hopefully it doesn't. Again, being fiscally conservative on a lot of things, healthcare is just one of those things that maybe it does make sense to look at what it looks like to, bring it together and have it be run centrally. The things that I have concerns over is how do you continue to incentivize people to pursue medicine as a career path, get quality doctors, make sure that they're, paid and compensated appropriately. How do you make sure that those things continue, right? And people want to make this a career path for themselves. They're actual practitioners. I don't know.
And I have the smartest people in that world. That's a separate world unto itself. I have the smartest people in that world looking at it and trying. And if they come up with something, I will present it. Now, maybe you won't be able to sell it, but if we get better health care for less money, I believe it's very saleable.
Just very quickly, when will we see your fully developed plan? When are you going to show the
I don't know that
public
you'll see it at all. I can only say that we have some of the best health care people. I've always tinkered with it. I think it's a little hard to explain. Obamacare, when I took it over, was a disaster. And I made it
Has insured
workable.
20 million people.
Yeah, because of me. Because of me. If you look at what I did, I was the
tried
one.
to-
I made it good.
You
yeah,
tried to
legally.
repeal and replace it. You tried to
Because
kill
if I
it,
repealed
sir.
it and replaced it, we would have had a better system because we wouldn't have had health care. And the Democrats would have been forced to do something. If we wouldn't have had it, the Democrats would have been forced to do something that they wouldn't do if we have it.
Let me ask you about another aspect of healthcare. You talked about this on the campaign trail, IVF. You promised free IVF for all who want it, either through the government or...
Hey, just going to read a quick comment here from Rebecca. I think if every job paid the same wage, then people would get their job because it's something that they wanted to do and not for the sake of money. I know everyone's going to disagree with me because of that. Yeah, I don't agree with that myself personally. I think there's a human nature factor that goes into it, that people need some sort of incentive, whatever it is, if it's pride, if it's ambition, whatever it might be. They need some incentive to drive behavior. Otherwise, it becomes like that old Soviet Union era thing where, you know, the level of production starts to diminish, the quality of products starts to diminish because everybody was, you know, assigned the same income, more or less, regardless of what they did. Everything started to just kind of dissipate and not really operate as a real system.
through mandates with insurance companies. I've been hearing from Republican senators, some of them, who say they're not going to support that plan. How are you going to get that passed?
Yeah,
Well,
Jay,
we're
I
going to see.
canceled
We
the
want
poll.
them to pay,
Maybe we
ideally
won't. I
the
don't know
insurance
what's going
companies
on
to
yet.
pay for it, the fertilization. I came out very early for a Republican especially, and I think they were looking for my guidance, my great wisdom, right? They were looking for it. And I got a call from Katie Britt, who's a terrific person, senator from Alabama, and she said, sir, we just had a really negative ruling from a judge in Alabama, conservative judge, that all of these clinics had to be closed. And she said, and she went into great detail, and she said people are devastated over it. And after literally speaking to her for 5 minutes, I issued an order, really an order in a sense, and it was a statement from the Republican Party that we are all for IVF and fertilization. Okay. The Alabama legislature met the following day and passed it. It was a beautiful thing to see. And I consider myself to be the father of IVF in a certain way. And the Republicans were very strong on the issue.
I don't know if he says that stuff just out of to humor himself, but when he said I consider myself the father of IVF in a way, I don't know. That stuff is just hysterical to me.
Sir, I want to understand where it falls in your list of priorities. I mean, is this something we can expect to see you try to move on in the first 100 days?
We're going to be talking about it, and we're going to be seeing. We have a lot of other things. I have tax cuts. You know, we'll be submitting in either the first or second package to Congress the extension of the tax cuts. So that might very well be in there, or it'll come.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty clear he's not. I don't know why he says that stuff.
Sometime after that.
Let's talk about abortion, sir. You have taken responsibility for overturning Roe v. Wade. You've said that abortion is now a state issue. There are steps that you could take, though, as president to restrict abortion through executive action without Congress. More than half of abortions in this country are medication abortions. Will you restrict the availability of abortion pills when you're in office?
I'll probably stay with exactly what I've been saying for the last 2 years, and the answer is no.
You commit to that?
Well, I commit. I mean, do things change? I think they change. I hate to go on shows like Joe Biden. I'm not going to give my son a pardon. I will not, under any circumstances, give him a pardon. I watched this, and I always knew he was going to give him a pardon, and so I don't like putting myself in a position like that. So things do change, but I don't think it's going to change at all.
Jay says he thinks whatever he thinks people want to hear, knowing that most of his voters won't research the facts. I'll say we have an equal number of voters that don't research things wherever, left, right, center. And I wouldn't cast it on them as a negative. People, their life just doesn't permit them to. They're busy. They're working a couple jobs potentially. They got kids. I mean, this is my hobby, right? I just like this stuff a lot. So I read about it. I pay attention as much as I can, but of course I don't know everything. But there's still, life gets in the way of some for folks sometimes, and so they don't know. And the difficult part now is most folks don't feel like they have a source that they can trust. And I think that's what's really problematic, because there's so many people that kind of say that they know everything, won't acknowledge if it's opinion versus fact. And that's, I think that's where we're at all across the spectrum, not just isolated in one pocket.
Okay. Let's talk about some of your picks to fill out your administration. You named Kash Patel to be the next FBI director. Yeah. He has a list in his book of 60 people that he calls members of the so-called deep state. It includes Democrats like Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. It includes former members of your cabinet, from Bill Barr to Christopher Wray. You campaigned on destroying the deep state. Do you want Kash Patel to launch investigations into people on that list?
No, I mean, he's going to do what he thinks is right.
Do you think that's right? Do you think that's right, sir?
If they think that somebody was dishonest or crooked or a corrupt politician, I think he probably has an obligation to do it. But
are you going to direct him to do it?
No, not at all. Not at all. We have two great people there. We have him and we have Pam. And Pam Bondi has been like a rocket ship.
Yeah, Alan, and so I don't remember who it was earlier that mentioned the ground news thing. That's like my shortcut right now. I leverage that. I actually look at Apple News because it gives you a pretty big aggregate of different sources. But ground news kind of, it breaks down specifically, like, here's what the left is saying, here's what the right is saying, here's what the more centrist sort of viewpoints are saying, based on historical reference of any given publication or any given news source. So I find that kind of high value, because then you get like a more complete picture. It's not like just accept one particular position versus the other. You get more information by just seeing who's focusing in on what, right? And it speaks to intent, and it speaks to, if anybody's trying to angle for something or what have you. Watching MSNBC and some of these other stations is more entertainment to me than anything else. I don't know. But check out, I got a link, 15% off. I think they're doing 50 right now, actually. I think it's 50 right now. I thought they were going to stop that after the holidays, but or after Christmas, but it looks like it's continuing.
She's very popular and very good and very fair. And Kash Patel is very fair. I'll tell you, I thought Kash may be difficult because he's, a strong conservative voice. And I don't know of anybody that's not singing his praises. The other day I was watching, and Trey Gowdy, who's a moderate person and very smart and very respected in the party, he's Kash's biggest fan. He said, this is the most misunderstood man in politics. He's great. I guess they worked together on the Russia hoax or something. And Trey Gowdy became a fan. Trey Gowdy. Everybody respects him. And, just like him, others also. I don't know of one negative vote. I don't think he's going to have any negative votes.
Is it your expectation, though, that Kash Patel will pursue investigations against your political enemies?
No, I don't think so.
Do you want to see that happen?
If they were crooked, if they did something wrong, if they have broken the law, probably. They went after me, They went after me and I did nothing wrong.
Well, let me ask you this. You said President Biden, quote, that you're going to appoint a real special prosecutor to go after Joe Biden. You said that during the campaign.
Where?
You said that on Truth Social, June 12th, 2023. I will appoint a real special prosecutor to go after the most corrupt president in the history of the United States, Joe Biden, and the entire Biden crime family. Are you going to do?
Hey, maybe Cuba can become the next state. What do you guys think? Maybe that should be the poll. Let's see. What do you guys think? Should Cuba
do that? Are you going to go after Joe Biden?
I'm really looking to make our country successful. I'm not looking to go back into the past. I'm looking to make our country successful.
Well, now it can be a race, guys. Who's going to be 51? Because you get better incentives. So Cuba, Canada, I mean, you guys got to bring it to the table here, because the next one gets the big prize.
Retribution will be through success. If we can make this country successful, that would be that would be such a great achievement. Bring it back. We have a country now that's overridden with crime, that has.
You know, I got to look it up. Maybe I'll ask my AI, but I thought Puerto Rico actually had a vote and they rejected statehood. I don't remember when or what have you. Let me reload my AI, see if I could look it up for me real quick. Hang on a sec, guys, while it loads up.
Good
here.
morning, Masood. How can I make your morning a bit brighter?
Hey, did Puerto Rico ever take a vote on statehood, and what was the outcome if they did?
Yeah, Puerto Rico has held several referendums on statehood. The latest was in November 2020, where a slight majority voted in favor. However, Congress hasn't acted on it yet, so it remains a U.S. territory. Thoughts on Puerto Rican statehood?
Oh, so they got a favorable vote this last go around. But, you know, they said 2020. I don't know what month, but of course that was the coronavirus year. So there's probably a bunch of other things going on, as well as the hurricane that hit. So probably not something that was high on the priority list at that point in time. But wow, I didn't realize that. I had just heard that they had taken votes and it was not a favorable outcome, but it sounds like in 2020 they did have a favorable one. So I don't know. I guess it's a three-way race to see who's 51.
Has millions of people that shouldn't be here, that should be in prisons in other countries, that should be in mental institutions. We have drug lords being dropped into our country and told never go back to their country. I'm looking to make our country great. I'm looking to bring prices down because, you know, I won on two things, the border and more than immigration. You know, they like to say immigration. I break it down more to the border, but I won on the border and I won on groceries. It's a very simple word, groceries. Like almost, you know, who uses the word? I started using the word, the groceries. When you buy apples, when you buy bacon, when you buy eggs, they would double and triple the price over a short period of time. And I won an election based on that. We're going to bring those prices way down.
I want to pause here because what you're saying is significant. Because you wrote on Truth Social in 2023 that you're going to appoint a real special prosecutor to go after Joe Biden. Now you're saying you're not going to do that.
I will say this. No, I'm not doing that unless I find something that I think is reasonable. But that's not going to be my decision. That's going to be Pam Bondi's decision and, to a different extent, Kash Patel, assuming they're both.
So this was actually a good response. He didn't take a stance. It's a delegation, right? Because a lot of the presidency is, you know, you appoint people that you think are quality, and then they, you know, fulfill to the fullest capacity whatever role they're given. And when it comes to justice, like FBI, Attorney General, the president should not be dictating things. So that was a proper response that he gave there to kind of, you know, make that delegation clear.
There, and I think they're both going to get approved. But I, you know, while you ask me that, what they've done to me with weaponization is a disgrace.
We'll get to some of that,
No,
sir.
wait. You can't do one without the other. In the history of our country, nothing like this has ever happened. And I've won these cases. I've won every one, and the rest are in the process of being won. Deranged Jack Smith is on his way back to The Hague, where he can execute people. This is where he should have stayed. I think he's dangerous even being there. But I'll tell you what they've done to me in terms of weaponization.
Yeah, Sat, you're right. I have no idea why dentistry is, I don't know, the pricing on it. It makes no sense to me. The only analog I have in my mind is, you know, perhaps it's these manufacturers, because I don't think it's all going to the dentist, even though they do pretty good. I think it's these manufacturers of the different products, whether it's, you know, the bonding agents, the implants, whatever it might be. kind of like how well, I mean, maybe it's not like the farming situation where the seed companies and fertilizer companies are reaping in most of the profits, because the dentists are still doing pretty good in that scenario. But I don't know where it's all going, right? So again, it makes you wonder, like, is there really value in that? Should that continue to be how we approach things?
Indictments, impeachments, and everything else. And in the end, it probably helped me because I got the biggest vote, the most votes any Republican's ever gotten in history.
Pam Bondi talks about investigating the investigators. Do you want her to investigate Jack Smith?
I want her to do what she wants to do.
Do you want to see Jack Smith investigated?
Well, I think he's very corrupt, but I want her to do whatever she has to do.
Are you going to direct her to prosecute Jack Smith?
She's a very smart person. She was a great attorney general in Florida. She's very experienced. I want her to do what she wants to do. I'm not going to instruct her to do it, no.
Sir, are you going to fire the current FBI director, Christopher Wray, who you appointed?
Well, I can't say I'm thrilled with him. He invaded my home. I'm suing the country over it. He invaded Mar-a-Lago. I'm very unhappy with the things he's done. And crime is at an all-time high. Migrants are pouring into the country that are from prisons and from mental institutions, as we've discussed. I can't say I'm thrilled. I don't want to be Joe Biden and give you an answer and then do the exact opposite.
We're going to talk about
So
that,
I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to say is I certainly cannot be happy with him. You take a look at what's happened. And then when I was shot in the ear, he said, oh, maybe it was shrapnel. Where's the shrapnel coming from? Is it coming from heaven? I don't think so. So we need somebody to straighten. I have a lot of respect for the FBI, but the FBI's respect has gone way down over the last number of years.
Don't you have to fire him in order to make room for Cash Patel if he is in fact confirmed?
Well, I mean, it would sort of seem pretty obvious that if Cash gets in, he's going to be taking somebody's place, right? And somebody is the man that you're talking about.
Okay. Let's talk about Project 2025. This is the conservative policy blueprint. You disavowed it during the campaign. You called it a product of the radical right. You've said some of their ideas were abysmal.
I said some of it is. Some of it is very good. Some of it's very mainstream, actually. Frankly, the Democrats should have used some of it because they went, with all the transgender that they were doing and with the men playing in women's sports. Well, if they wouldn't have done that, maybe they would have done better.
Well, so you take me to my question. You're now giving people involved in Project 2025 prominent roles in your administration.
Hey, guys, and I appreciate you guys being here. Give the live a like. It helped me out tremendously. I appreciate you guys.
Administration. Are you changing your mind about Project 2025? No. Is this now the policy blueprint for the second Trump administration?
No. Some people, if you take a look at the group, it was hundreds of people were involved. And I was actually, I reprimanded the whole group. I said, you shouldn't have placed this document in front of the voters because I have nothing to do with it and I'm the one that's running. You had no right to do this where you put a 1,000-page document in front, and many of those things I disagree with. Now, many of those things I happen to agree with. Many of those things Democrats should have agreed to, and I think they would have done much better in the election because they got slaughtered.
Well, I guess people see the list: Russ Vought, Brendan Carr, Peter Navarro, John Ratcliffe, Pete Hoekstra, Monica Crowley, and they think these are all of the people who were involved in or writing Project 2025. This must be a blueprint for work requirements, eliminating the Head Start program, criminalizing pornography.
I read some of the 2025 stuff and then I stopped because it clearly was not aligned with Trump. I mean, during the election, you could go to his website. He had what he termed Agenda 47. It may still be out there. I don't know. But that gave some points as to kind of where he stood or where he wanted to take things. Interestingly enough, Biden had nothing on his website up until the point where he dropped out of the race. And then, a couple weeks later, Harris actually put some things on there about positions and stuff. So to her credit, she did take a stance on some stuff, even if her stance on allowing fracking did flip-flop. At least she put some stuff on paper to, because, you do something like that, that's demonstrating some level of accountability because you're drawing a line in the sand,
Is that what we can expect to see?
Well, I don't know how they voted. I don't know. I never spoke to them actually about it. And I purposely, and I told you, normally it would be just the opposite. I'd review every page. I purposely didn't even want to see it. Because when somebody like you asked me a question about Project 2025, I can honestly say I've never seen it. I have nothing to do with it. I didn't read it, but I did hear some things in there that I would totally disagree with. And I said to the people that...
I'm going to ask my AI. Let me see if it's still alive here. It's still on. Hey, are you still there?
I'm here, Masood. What's on your mind?
Can you give me a summary, or actually give my live stream viewers a summary of what Project 2025 is?
Sure thing. Project 2025 is a conservative initiative aiming to prepare policies and personnel to implement a conservative agenda in the U.S. government if a Republican wins the presidency in 2024. It focuses on revamping federal agencies and regulations to align with conservative principles. Thoughts or questions on this?
Who developed the plan, and is anybody tasked with implementing it?
Project 2025 was developed by several conservative think tanks and advocacy groups, including the Heritage Foundation. They're working to identify and prepare conservative personnel to fill key roles in the federal government, should they gain power. It's a structured effort, aiming for significant influence. Intrigued by the potential implications?
Is there a similar effort called 2030?
As of my last update in October 2023, there wasn't a prominent initiative known as Project 2030. If you're referring to a specific project or plan, it might not be widely recognized or could be under a different name. Is there something specific you're curious about regarding 2030?
No, that's it. Thanks for your help.
Anytime, Masood. Reach out if you have more questions. Enjoy your day.
All right. Well, and again, the funny thing is, it says that, oh, my data is only current up to October of 23. And then all of a sudden it's telling me about something that was in June of this year. And it's bizarre. So I don't know how that timing's working out exactly. Anyway, let's see. I thought they were talking about saying they're controlled by their business. Oh, is that Great Reset? Okay. Well, that was, yeah.
We're really the people
happening
behind it.
anymore.
You know who those people are? I said, you really had no right doing this to me, because they used it as a soundbite, the Democrats. And I don't know, it couldn't have been too effective because they got slaughtered, but they did use it as a soundbite.
But to people who see, oh, he's bringing in all of these people from Project 2025, he must know what it is.
Well,
you know
what? I don't know what it is, no. I don't know what it is.
You still don't know
but
what
I
it is?
heard
All these
certain
people
things
are
that I
coming
didn't
in from
like.
your...
And by the way, I heard certain things that are phenomenal. Okay?
Like what?
Like law and order. We want law and order. Okay? Little things like, let's put prisoners in jail. Let's not let people come out and raid every drugstore in Manhattan so that we have to put glass up and every store is going out of business.
Let me ask you about something you've referenced a couple of times in this interview. I asked you last time we sat down for an interview if you were...
Hang on, guys. I did a Google search, and it's called the 2030 Project. Let me ask my AI. Maybe the wording kind of tripped it up. Hey, can you tell me about the 2030 Project?
Sure. The 2030 Agenda is a global initiative adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015. It outlines 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, to address global challenges like poverty, inequality, climate change, and peace by 2030. It's a roadmap for a better, more sustainable future for all. Thoughts on the goals?
Is this also referred to as the Great Reset? Is this also referred to as the Great Reset?
Yes, the 2030 Agenda is sometimes associated with the concept of the Great Reset, a proposal by the World Economic Forum. It aims to revamp economies and societies, focusing on sustainable development, social responsibility, and global cooperation. It's about rethinking how we rebuild economies post-pandemic.
Looks like it cut itself off. So yeah, there you go. The Great Reset. I just did a quick Google search and it popped up. So I was trying to see if it would give us a summary. So I think that sufficed for that. Sat says, ask your assistant where we actually rank in terms of healthcare globally and how much we pay. All right. Hey, can you tell me how the United States ranks in terms of healthcare globally as well as healthcare cost? Are you still with me? I think it timed out. Hold on, let me reset. I have to give the AI the Great Reset here. Hang on. All right, it's back.
Good morning, Masood. What can I do for you? I'm rolling up my virtual sleeves.
Hey, can you tell me how the United States ranks in terms of healthcare quality and cost globally?
Sure, Masood. The U.S. has some of the highest healthcare costs globally, but often ranks lower in healthcare quality compared to other developed nations, especially in areas like access, efficiency, and equity.
Can you give me like a specific number, numeric ranking?
There's no single definitive number, but in various rankings, the U.S. often falls around the mid-30s to 40s out of 195 countries in terms of healthcare systems, depending on the criteria used.
Okay, so doesn't sound that great. Highest cost, and we still are in the 20s or 40s out of 190 some odd countries. I mean, that doesn't sound that promising. Jay says that 2030 project is not related to 2025. Yep, they're unrelated. Absolutely right. You people are going to pay $7 for an avocado. Don't need to know, yeah, I tell you that. Oh yeah, I didn't remember personally what 2030 was all about, and then Rebecca mentioned the Great Reset, so we just got a summary of it there.
We're going to pardon yourself. You said no. But now that President Biden has pardoned his son, Hunter, are you reconsidering? Might you pardon yourself?
I didn't do anything wrong. I was given the option. And the lawyers told me, a very specific lawyer, I don't have to go into who, but very high up in the administration said, sir, if you pardon yourself, you're going to look guilty. And you did nothing wrong. Oh, I had that option. I could have saved myself a lot of legal fees, but it turned out that I was right. Look at what's gone on. Everything's being dropped. I still have a Fani Willis, a total hoax. That's a total hoax. It's all being dropped. It's all been discredited. It's been dropped. There are those people that say, and this would be the first time in history, that all of those fake indictments, they were going after a political opponent. There are those that say that I actually did better in the election because of it. Now, that would be a first. I think you would agree, because normally that's like you go back to the microphones, you say, I'm leaving right now. I will leave office. I'm going back to my family, and I will fight for my name. Well, I had to fight for my name in public because I didn't leave office. But no, I didn't want to pardon, and I didn't want to pardon myself. I had the option to pardon myself.
And you don't want one now? You're not going to pardon yourself now?
What do I need one for? First of all, I've won almost all of the cases.
What if President
and the ones
Biden...
that I didn't win are on...
I like the comment. What is that? Atheist Mecca. Oh, that's interesting. Username. Says he's lying whatever he says.
resuscitation.
What if President Biden offered you a pardon? Would you accept it?
I've never even thought about it. I don't think he'll do it. Look, if he did, he's the one that started this whole thing. He got the Justice Department to go after me. And the state cases are all being run by the Justice Department, which is illegal. They had their people from the Justice Department work for Alvin Bragg in order to get something going. They worked for Letitia James in the state.
I'm going to close out this poll, but it seems like Cuba is not the state everybody wants to be number 51. So I don't know, Canada, it's all on you now.
He had his people go from the federal government and take lesser jobs in the state in order to get Donald
And you know
Trump.
he denies he had anything to do with it.
No,
and
you
there's
can't
no...
deny it. You know why?
Yeah.
Because they were there. Wait a minute. Wait. You know, you have a tendency to sort of like slough over things. You just made a statement. His person, the top, maybe the third or second or third person, left the federal government, the DOJ, and went to work for Letitia James. And then, after they got that one started, went to work for the DA.
Let me ask you about some of this new reporting. NBC News is reporting that President Biden is considering giving preemptive pardons to the likes of Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, and Anthony Fauci. If President Biden does...
All right, so these preemptive pardons for all these other folks, I get the one with Hunter, right? I mean, I think everybody can understand that one. I mean, just forget about the politics of it. It's his kid, right? Like, there's an element of that I think everybody can understand. All these other preemptive pardons that are being floated out there, I don't know if it's just for politics. You know, the usual alarmist type stuff that's getting put out there, or if there's something to it. Because if there are those pardons that are put out there, it's probably not going to happen until we get, you know, further down the line in January. You know, one of those last minute type scenarios. And that would be very interesting to see what happens. And by that, I mean, what information gets released post January 20th, if that's the driver for the pardons being issued. Of course, I say that it's a lot of speculation, treating it like a reality show. I hope that's not the case. I hope there's no necessary pardons and everything is fine. But, you know, the fact that it's being brought up here on NBC News and it's not Fox that's talking about this, or something that's a little bit more along the lines of conservative, you know, media, I find interesting, right? It's Meet the Press. It's Chuck Todd made it a very liberal program. She's bringing it a little bit more to the center. But I thought it was just interesting that it was brought up as a question on this network.
Doesn't issue those pardons, do you think they are going to wish that he had? Are they going to be pursued?
I can tell you this about Cheney, and she's a so-called Republican. I think she hurt the Democrats terribly. When I saw that Kamala put Cheney out on the campaign trail, I said, that's the end of Kamala. I really did. I thought it was a terrible move, especially if you're a Democrat. But Cheney did something that's inexcusable, along with Thompson and the people on the Unselect Committee of political thugs and, you know, creeps. So the Unselect Committee...
Why was Roger Stone pardoned? I don't remember. Let me see if my little buddy here is still listening. Hey, can you tell me why Roger Stone was pardoned?
Roger Stone's pardon by former President Trump in December 2020 came after he was convicted of several charges, including witness tampering and lying to Congress during the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. The pardon erased his conviction and any remaining prison sentence.
Okay. All right. Should have figured.
Went through a year and a half of testimony. Wait. They deleted and destroyed all evidence of that they found. You know why? Because Nancy Pelosi was guilty. Nancy Pelosi turned down 10,000 troops. You wouldn't have had a J6 because other people were guilty.
Hey, you know, ChatGPT has kind of like a free entry tier that I think uses the 3.5 version of their algorithm or their model or whatever it is, which is still pretty darn good. So, I mean, it looks stuff up pretty quick, but you need to double check things and get used to how it's giving you responses, because there's times when I read things that come back where I can tell, like, I don't know if it really is giving me a full response. And, you know, I call it out and then it apologizes to me, which is strange. But, I mean, if you guys are interested, you could ChatGPT, I think, has a free tier. You know, actually, I think Microsoft's opened up Copilot as well, to have like a free tier. I don't know if it's, well, I don't know what the difference is, honestly, but something to take a look at.
The people that said that I attacked 2 Secret Service agents in a car. I grabbed one around the neck. I was then rebuffed, and I grabbed the other one. These are two of the toughest men anywhere on the planet. They happen to be slightly younger than me, maybe, you know, just.
Hey, Richard, if Trump thinks it was a bad idea, it means that it was a really good idea. Yeah. Very contrarian of you.
Just a little bit. Let me just tell you. They testified. They said it was total. And all of this.
Did you guys catch that? I'm glad they censored it for me because that would mess up my live. So thank you, NBC, in advance for that.
Stuff came out. People lied so badly. Now, listen, this was a committee, a big deal. They lied. And what did they do?
So, you know, it's interesting, Justin. A lot of people didn't think George W. Bush was, you know, the sharpest tool in the shed, but he was universally accepted as the strong leader. I don't think it's in the same regard as Trump, but it's not, I guess, you know, not like the Elon Musk scenario of being the high IQ, smartest person in the room, as well as being a strong leader. That's not always, I guess, the recipe for success. It's more, can you identify who the smartest people in the room are that you want to work for you to get things done? And that's been his strong suit over his, you know, career and his businesses, is finding those individuals and putting him in a position to be successful. And I hope that it continues for everyone's sake.
Deleted and destroyed a whole year and a half worth of testimony. Do you know that I can't get? I think those people committed a major crime.
Sir?
And Cheney was behind it.
Well,
and so was Benny Thompson. And every.
Hey, Jay, I appreciate the comment. Thank you for that. And Rebecca, Alexa apologizes. You know, I don't know how to make my Ring doorbell not talk. Or, I mean, Alexa apparently is in there now. I should probably look that up. I don't know how to get Alexa out of there. Jane, I appreciate it, Rebecca. Thanks for subscribing. And yeah, everybody, hey, give the live a like, subscribed. That would very much help me out a lot.
Everybody on that.
Help me out in terms of getting more circulation for the content. Because again, you know, I voted for Trump. I land conservative on a lot of things, liberal on some stuff as well. But I think there's an opportunity for folks to engage in some, you know, meaningful dialogue and just at least hear folks out. I'm hopeful that I can kind of get something in place to, you know, bring people on the YouTube side so they can just, you know, give their perspective and comments as well, as live stream's going to go. But haven't sorted that out yet.
A committee.
We're going to.
For what they did.
Yeah.
Honestly, they should go to jail.
So you think Liz Cheney should go to jail?
For what they did.
Everyone on the committee, you think
I think
should
everybody
go to
on
jail.
anybody that voted in favor.
Are you going to direct your FBI director and
No.
your attorney?
TikTok, I have to be very careful. I mean, stuff gets flagged very quickly there. It's not, in fact, I'll tell you what, Instagram now has got me flagged or something because I tested it out. I posted a photo of my dog and I just wrote, I love my dog. And it flagged it as inappropriate content. So I don't know what's going on Instagram right now, but TikTok's pretty tight on stuff. I'm finding YouTube, you know, has boundaries that make sense, you know. John says finding the best people is what a successful CEO does. Absolutely right. I agree with that. That's why she's always apologizing to me. You're yelling at her. Trump ran 2 casinos into the ground. So, Sir Chronicle ran 2. It's an interesting dynamic, right? There were bankruptcies declared, and there's always an equating of it to they were run into the ground. When you have billions of dollars, you're not running a singular business necessarily, right? You have a portfolio. It's not like Elon's an exception, right? Because he has a distinct business, Tesla. It's massive. Or he has a SpaceX. I mean, there's, you know, just a few. But with Trump's scenario, he has a portfolio, right? And he's managing this massive portfolio of properties and companies. And so they have to each meet certain performance metrics. And over time, if they don't, they're underperforming. And you will divest from them. And the divest could be in the form of a sale, or if you can't make a successful sale, you close up shop. And a particular lever to do that is bankruptcy. So that particular asset was not performing well, and that's how it was managed within the portfolio. Orange man bad. Yeah, put a little piggy there. You needed to get a little orange emoji. Do they have an orange emoji? I don't know if they do.
General to send them to jail?
No, not at all. I think that they'll have to look at that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to focus on drill, baby, drill.
When you say that,
on
it carries
strengthening the
weight,
border.
though. You know, you've tapped these people to lead the Justice Department and FBI.
They can do whatever they want.
Okay.
Biden can give him a pardon if he wants to, and maybe he should. Just remember.
I see the oil droplet asking what the cow is all about. I'm assuming you're an oil guy. Oh, there's an orange right there. Very nice. I'm assuming you're an oil guy. I'm an oil guy too. The political cow is I think way back when, it's like an economics 101 analogy where they talk about different forms of government and they use the cow as an analogy. So I guess a couple of them would be, if you lived in a capitalist society, if a farmer has 2 cows, they'll sell one, buy a bull, they'll grow a massive, herd, and they'll hire a bunch of people to, manage it, and they'll retire rich. But if you lived in a communist society, the government will come and take your cows from you, and every week you'll have to go wait in a line, and you'll get a little bit of spoiled milk. So they start to use the cows as an analogy to explain different forms of government. It's on Wikipedia, if you think that's an authoritative source or not. But that's where the analogy comes from, or the reference is to.
Unselect committee, a year and a half of sworn testimony, and after getting.
He couldn't make it profitable. That's the issue. Yeah, sometimes you win, you lose, right? And it gets to a point where you say it's not worth continuing to invest dollars. We don't have a bright idea, so we just divest from it. And that's how it works. You manage your portfolio accordingly. You continue to invest in the winners, and you sell off the losers.
Getting all of the testimony, they deleted it, and they destroyed almost everything. There's nothing left. It's unprecedented.
And they deny
If you
doing
do that in a civil case, you go to jail.
They deny doing that, and officials say that the order never came in for the National
They put out
Guard.
a statement.
On January 6th, let me ask you this about January 6th. I think
Benny
you're going to want to
Thompson
answer
wrote
this.
in a statement that he has destroyed all evidence.
Let me ask you this about
It's
January
amazing.
6th.
I wish you could be you have such potential.
This is fabulous now. You have such potential. I'm going to back it up. We got to watch this. I agree that it is a little bit of a softer interview. She is trying to dig in on a few topics, but not leaning in too hard. Because, you've seen how things go awry in other interviews, and she doesn't want that to happen to her. She's, hitting it pretty big here, meet the press, and a lot of things that are going for her. So it's like a weird balance she's trying to strike. But let's see what he says here.
If you could be, wish you could be you have such potential. If you could be just non-biased, you hurt yourself so badly. I'm telling you, they deleted and destroyed all the evidence. Everyone knows it. And you slough it off like it doesn't mean anything.
No, I'm just saying they deny it. That's all I'm saying.
Kristen, if I did it, you would be standing up in that chair shouting at me. And you know what I'd do? I'd say, you got me.
You got me.
They have done something so illegal. They have a committee sworn to, and because it was so bad, the only reason they did it is because the testimony turned out to be in favor of me. Like Secret Service testified and disputed everything. It made them into a bunch of liars. Not Secret Service, it made the people. They got rid of it because it made Nancy Pelosi, the mayor of D.C., so many people look like criminals. And I will tell you, it's illegal for them to delete and to destroy that evidence.
Let me ask you about January 6th in a different capacity, okay? I think you're going to want to answer this question. You promised to pardon those who attacked the Capitol on January 6th. Are you still vowing to follow through with that promise?
We're looking at it right now, most likely, yeah.
Well,
Those people have suffered long and hard, and there may be some exceptions to it. I have to look. But, if somebody was radical, crazy, there might be some people from Antifa there. I don't know, because those people seem to be in good shape. Whatever happened to Scaffold Man? You know who Scaffold Man was? He stood on a scaffold telling everybody to go and nothing happened to him. Whatever happened to Ray Epps? Now, I don't know anything about Ray Epps, but it was sort of strange the way he was talking. Where is he? What happened to him?
Take care, Alan.
Because the people that did very little, they arrested an old woman because I don't think she did anything. They don't even know what she did. These people have suffered. Their lives have been destroyed. And yet in Portland, where they burn down half the city, they burn it down all the time. It's like a, routine occurrence. They don't do anything. They attack the courthouse, federal courthouse. They always say federal building. Okay. They destroyed the beautiful limestone exterior of the courthouse in Portland. They killed people in Portland. Seattle, people got killed in Seattle. They took over a big chunk of the city. They took it over. They took the city away. Minneapolis, it looked like when they said this is a friendly protest, and yet over the poor slob from CNN, his shoulder, the entire city was burning down. It looked like World War II. Nothing happened. But wait, nothing happened. They took over the police statement. They took over the police station in Minneapolis. They burned it down. Nothing happened to anybody. And yet these people have been in jail, and I hear that jail is a hellhole. They've done reports, and you would say that's true. They've done reports. This is the...
Hey, 308 Chewy, such a BS artist. Yeah, a lot of folks kind of throw it out there for... oh, wow, I got him on a really good facial expression there. I work security for Buffett's chemical investments. You just downsized a lot. Ooh. A lot of data leading into the election wasn't looking too hot. The jobs report for October that came in right in the beginning of November before Election Day was not very good at all. And so, if there was like a straw that broke the camel's back, that might have been it, for some folks. But you couple that with other individualized data points, because a lot of times people say, oh, look at the stock market, record highs, we're doing great. Wall Street's doing great. Look at the GDP, it's growing like crazy. But then you got to start backing things up, and, GDP growth as a consequence of the printing press and a consequence of high inflation may not be exactly the scenario that you want to be in, because there's individualized surveys that people do. Redfin, I've mentioned this one before because it still gets me. Redfin, if you're not familiar, is a real estate aggregating service, kind of like Zillow. They did a survey that they found half of their respondents struggled to pay their rent from one month to the next, and a quarter actually skipped meals regularly so that they could make ends meet and pay rent. So there's a lot of individualized, metrics and surveys that are coming out there, and then CPI is ticking back up. So interest rates, are either going to not be lowered, but market in anticipation of it. I showed you all that chart of the dollar. It's continuing to get stronger here. So they're anticipating interest rates going up here in the next not too distant future. So I wonder if we're hitting that inflection point now, and, the administration, because it was an election year, did everything they possibly could to keep things going up until the election. And now, of course, we'll hit something. I don't know. Is it going to happen February? Is it going to happen January? Is it going to happen in June? I don't know when. But I'm not feeling too great, and that's just personal opinion.
Most disgusting, filthy place. These people are living in hell.
Let me just-
And I think it's very unfair.
But-
So,
but-
yeah,
but let
most
me-
likely I'll do it very quickly.
Very quickly. Okay, but some of them, 169 of them, have pleaded guilty to assaulting police officers.
Because they had no choice.
900 pleaded guilty to other crimes. They're also going to be eligible for a pardon from you?
Listen, it's a very tough system.
Hey, Richard. So, stock market is already shaky because of Trump's threat of tariffs, which he has no clue what they are. The market actually took off, even though he had very publicly said that, you know, he wanted to put tariffs in. There was an irrational upward response to his election. You know, things are starting to kind of correct a little bit. You know, crypto along with it went up quite a bit. But there's a trend that I kind of I don't know. I don't know how else to describe it. I feel like we are topping out. The valuations that different tech companies are at are way out of balance. I mean, you have trillion-dollar companies that, like Nvidia, has, you know, multi-trillion-dollar company, but its revenues are significantly less than some of the industrials that, you know, have maybe like, you know, 5 times the revenue that Nvidia does. You start scratching your head like, well, wait a minute, why do they have such a high multiple? And at some point, you know, credit tightens, people can't do as much leverage, or it just takes a few bad bets to cause people to have to sell and unwind their positions. I mean, major investors and, you know, all the algorithmic trading that's happening, things can kind of unfold pretty quickly. And I don't know, it's just kind of an uncomfortable spot. I'd rather, if I was going to get back in now, I'd rather buy at a lower point than we are at right now. I mean, I almost feel like you'd be buying at a top. Personal opinion, not financial advice.
Do you know, almost nobody, I saw people that didn't even go into the building and they were convicted. And you
Yeah, I
had the
know it's
police saying, come on in, come on in. I mean, you know, the police are saying, come on in, everybody, come on in. They had people, you know, you have a lot of cameras. They don't want to release the tapes. They don't want to release the tapes.
So, but you're going to consider pardoning even those who've pleaded guilty to crimes, including assaulting police
Well,
officers?
sometimes they say, here's your choice.
You're not ruling it out.
In fact, if you look at some of my
I know the
older
system.
streams,
The system's a very corrupt system. They say to a
tell
guy,
you.
you're going to go to jail for 2 years or for 30 years. And these guys are looking, their whole lives have been destroyed. For 2 years, they've been destroyed. But the system is a very nasty system.
Okay. Let's
Yeah,
move
I'm going to
on.
look at everything. We're going to look at individual
Everyone.
cases, yeah.
Okay.
But I'm going to be acting very quickly.
Within your first 100 days, first day?
First day.
First day.
Yeah, I'm looking
Going
first
to issue
day.
these pardons.
These people have been there, how long is it, 3 or 4 years?
Okay.
You know, by the way, they've been in there for years, and they're in a filthy, disgusting place that shouldn't even be allowed to be open.
Let's talk about your cabinet picks. I know we started off talking about Pete Hegseth.
yeah, I picked up some Bitcoin when it was at like, I don't know, 37-ish. So I didn't get that bottom when it was, I don't know. Did it drop to like 16, 17 way back? I don't remember now. But yeah, I'm completely out at this point. And I could be wrong, like you're saying. It could go up to 150. Who knows?
But I just want to return to that very quickly. Have you gotten assurances from senators that he's going to be confirmed? Do you
No.
think he can make it?
No, I think you will, yeah. I've had
Really
a lot of
hard, man,
senators
really
call me
bad.
up saying he's fantastic.
You don't drink yourself.
No.
You've talked about how devastating drinking can be.
Yeah.
How concerned are you that the person who you picked for this?
So I am divine. The market's always forward-looking, right? Companies can announce earnings that are just blockbuster, but if they say like, well, hey, actually next quarter, it's not looking too hot, the stock will tank regardless of what the current day's earnings are. His plans of tariffs, all that stuff has been out there. Nothing has come out that's been, a surprise structurally to them. So if, we start to move downward, it's not going to be, necessarily because of a direct action Well, hopefully not. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that. There could be, but it would have to be something new, not something that's already been kind of announced, that's already in play or already baked into the market at this point.
Top job at the Defense Department, at least according to those who've worked with him, has struggled with drinking.
But I've spoken to people that know him very well, and they say he does not have a drinking problem.
Right.
And, he had a lot of knives out for him. A lot of people don't want to see the military made better.
Let me ask you about former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. You picked her to be the Director of National Intelligence.
Right.
In 2017, she had 2 secret meetings with Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. Do you have questions or concerns about those meetings?
No. And he's got bigger problems right now.
Well, do you think it
Yeah, so I mean, he takes office January 20th. If it tanks on the 21st, is it really his doing? If he decides, hey, I'm going to institute a 41.6% corporate income tax, and that goes into effect in February, and then, things start to struggle, and by June, there's layoffs and stuff. You can make a direct connection, action, reaction at that point. But absent anything like that, it's just the current trajectory that we're on and the current system and framework that we're operating under.
makes it hard for her?
His country is collapsing.
Yeah. I mean, do you think it compromises her ability to handle that?
I met with Putin. I met with President Xi of China. I met with Kim Jong-un twice. Does that
When
mean
you
that
were
I can't be president?
Well, when you were president, they weren't
I know,
secret
but look,
meetings.
people meet. All these people meet. I mean, I see.
Yeah, that I know what you're talking about in terms of the grocery prices. They were talking about directly, like, we got to bring those down. And I wish people wouldn't speak in those terms, because, even when they claim victory on inflation, like, oh, we got it down to 2%, it just means that costs are going up by 2% instead of 9 or more, depending on what product you're looking at. So it's not really going back down.
Some of the most
Unless we enter a really bad economic downturn.
dishonest people. I'll tell you, the 51 agents that said that the laptop wasn't from Hunter, it was from Russia. What about them? Tell me about them. Do you think they did something wrong? Do you think they were all so stupid that they thought that the laptop from hell?
So you have confidence in Tulsi Gabbard?
I do. She's a very respected person.
Let me ask you about RFK Jr. He has obviously talked about his skepticism of vaccines. He's expressed opposition to childhood vaccines. Do you want to see childhood vaccines eliminated?
If they're dangerous for the children. Look.
So possibly?
When you look at some of the problems, when you look at what's going on with disease and sickness in our country, something's wrong.
Are you talking about autism?
Well, if you take a look at autism, you go back 25 years, autism was almost non-existent. It was, 1 out of 100,000. And now it's close to 1 out of 100.
Well,
I mean, what's happening? If they can find it. Now, I did something the other night that was a little unusual. At Mar-a-Lago, I called the drug companies, the top drug companies, and I called RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz and some of his people. And I said, let's all get together and let's figure out where we're going. Because we're going to do a lot of things. Number one, we're going to reduce prices, because the middleman makes more money than the drug companies, in all fairness to the drug companies. There's a middleman that nobody even knows who they are. And you look at our drug prices, they're much higher than the prices for the same medicine, for the same stuff. So we met, and we met for a long time, and we talked about pricing, and we talked about vaccines, in terms.
Yeah, Jay, I wish it was characterized better, how he put it. I can only speculate what he intended, which is my thought process, that prices are going to continue to go up. You got to figure out how to structurally change things to make the system work for more people, because that's not the case right now. Whether it's wage growth, I don't know what else. Wage growth is the only thing that comes to my mind. But again, that would require a lot of things to come into play. So Jay says, why did you support Trump, as you seem to recognize many of his nonstop lies? I mean, these aren't necessarily things that any other politician makes commitments to that they then have to expand upon, or whatever it is, clarify a little bit later on. I mean, just like Biden and Harris had continually said, we're going to, bring down prices. Look, we've won. Inflation is down. It's, prices are going down. Inflation's at 2%, but it's like, no prices have actually gone down. It's just the rate of increase is slowed. But, overall, though, it comes back to the modern monetary theory that Biden and all the Democrats are pushing out there that I don't agree with. Which, again, the pillars of it are nonstop printing. You can do it because you're the government. It's no big deal. You can have debt to GDP of whatever ratio you want. It's actually no big deal because you could cancel the debt. I mean, you imagine that? We cancel the debt. What would happen at that point? And then to control inflation, you actually increase taxes on people. So just as prices are going up, they're going to take more of your money away. I mean, those things just in my mind, they don't work. You don't have to do a lot of calculus to, get the sense that that's not a recipe for success.
In terms of what happens, we talked about pesticides, we talked about everything. And I think a lot of good things are going to come from him. And he's not going to upset any system. He's not going to upset this. He's not looking to, to reinvent the wheel totally. But when you look at the numbers, we really don't have a very healthy country.
Well, sir, going back 25 years, studies show that there is no link between vaccines and autism. And yet it sounds like you are open to the possibility of him looking
I'm
at
open to
getting
anything.
rid of them?
I think somebody has to find out. If you go back 25 years ago, you had very little autism. Now you have it. I mean,
Well, they say because they're better at identifying it.
1 in 100,000, and now it's 1 in 100. That's a pretty bad number.
Childhood vaccines
I mean,
have
something is going on. I don't know if it's
Price caps were the plan that were proposed by Harris, which if you force the grocer to cap prices, they'll go bankrupt, and then you'll have real problems because all the subsequent pieces of the supply chain can pass cost onto them, but they can't then pass it on to the consumer. And, we can get into the margin game, but I mean, if their margins went from, 1.5% to a 2.5%, that overall realistically gouge people. I actually got to look at, because the Kroger CEO, I thought, kind of acknowledged, was it eggs? I don't know, maybe somebody in the chat remembers. There was some product that he acknowledged that they had intentionally increased just to grow profit margins. I've never gone back to actually listen to that full or read the full text of that. Because I wonder sometimes how that gets construed. Is it, we're trying to grow our profits, so we increase prices, versus how it's being characterized as, I'll admit to price gouging. I mean, again, their margins are so tight, 1-2% margins on things.
vaccines. Maybe it's chlorine in the water, right? People are looking at a lot of different things.
Well, childhood
I
vaccines...
want them to look at everything.
Everything. So childhood vaccines have prevented about 4 million deaths around the world every year.
I think that's
sir.
great.
Isn't that...
I'm all for it. I think it's great. Hey, look, I'm not against vaccines. The polio vaccine is the greatest thing. If somebody told me get rid of the polio vaccine, they're going to have to work real hard to convince me. I think
interestingly enough, all the Nobel laureate economists that were supportive of Biden and then immediately Harris, interestingly enough, they all are signed up for modern monetary theory. They've gotten their Nobel Prizes based on theoretical work on that project that does not. There's no successful case of that anywhere. I mean, you look at the Greek example; they continued to, take outsized debt, and where did that leave them, right? It ends in the same way in multiple instances. Argentina's fell in that fate in the past, and now they're doing really great, so that's good for them. But all of those Nobel laureate prize winners are all proponents of modern monetary theory that I just, on principle, I don't agree with. So when they're supportive of a candidate, they're supportive of them applying the theory that they have researched. But is there a practical application of that? Because that's the disconnect, right? Is somebody that's been an academic their entire life hasn't had to put things into practice necessarily. It's not the case probably with all of them, but there's a good portion of folks out there that just operate in the ivory tower, which again is the same problem with politicians staying in office for 30, 40 years. They get disconnected from reality and don't know what the challenges are that people are really facing in life and how to best support them through it, or what needs to be addressed. The term limits there, in addition to getting money out of politics and not letting them trade based on insider information. But who can put something like that forward, right? Because a lot of people take advantage. They become, multimillionaires after they leave Congress, either through lobbying engagements that they can be a part of, or because of the insider trading they did while they were in Congress. I don't know. It's a difficult proposition to get somebody to change it, and so that's where Trump came in as the outsider, where he openly acknowledged, like, yeah, I leverage the tax code as it's written, and I pay little to no taxes. It's going to take somebody with that type of mentality, with that type of a position already, to make that change. Where it's like, well, I don't care; it doesn't affect me, right?
Certain vaccines are incredible, but maybe some aren't. And if they aren't, we have to find out. But when you talk about autism, because it was brought up, and you look at the amount we have today versus 20 or 25 years ago, it's pretty scary.
Well, again, scientists say that's because they've gotten better at identifying it, and there's no link in
but
studies.
The drug companies are going to be working with RFK Jr., and he's been an interesting guy to me. I've watched him for 25 years. And he's been an interesting guy.
Let's talk about Elon Musk, another interesting person.
He's very interesting.
Last month, one of your allies said, quote, he's behaving as if he's a co-president. Will you favor Elon Musk over other leaders of competitor companies like Jeff Bezos, Mary Barra?
No, Jeff Bezos called me. We're having dinner. As you know, Mark Zuckerberg came in. We had a really nice dinner. He asked to have dinner. I had dinner with him. I'm having dinner with everybody. People like me now. It's something going on. I said, would you have come to dinner with me if I lost? I think the answer is no. I said nicely, kiddingly, of course, because I don't want to sound foolish. But I say jokingly, would you have been here at dinner if I lost? And the answer was probably not. Look, I'm getting called by everybody. It's very interesting. It's different than the first. When I won the first time, I wasn't nearly as popular as this. And one thing that's very important in terms of the election, I love that I won the popular vote, and by a lot. If I didn't,
1.6%.
because they would go with the other one. They say, while he didn't win the popular vote, he won a lot of. I won a lot of the Electoral College, but they would always preface it by saying. Now they say he won the popular vote, and he won the Electoral College, and he won all 7 swing states. That was a great election.
Very quickly, because we're going to talk about the election coming up, but you've tapped Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, to head up this Department of Government Efficiency.
Correct.
Which proposes cuts to the federal government.
All right. So do you think she's going to call it Doge, or she's going to stick with the formal name? I'm going to say she's not going to use the Doge term.
I think a lot of people hear that and they get concerned about Medicare and Social Security and
Not
Medicaid
going to have anything to do.
And defense spending.
We're talking
you
about
won't touch
theft,
Medicare, Social Security.
Abuse, fraud.
Okay.
No, I said we're not touching Social Security, other than we make it more efficient. But the people are going to get what they're getting.
Okay, so the entitlements
And
off the table.
we're not raising ages or any of that stuff.
Okay,
No,
off the table.
I won't do it.
Okay, let's turn to foreign policy. Should Ukraine prepare for less aid from the United States after you're sworn into office?
Yeah, probably. Sure.
You've said you can end the war in
We're in for
24
350 billion, and Europe is in for 100 billion. Why isn't Europe in for the same as us? The one thing that should happen is that Europe should come in they should equalize. And, Biden, all he had to do, like I did with NATO, I said,
All right. So I see some comments on Mitch McConnell. Randy saying, I think that Every federal politician of more than 2 terms should have to live in their own hometown for 3 months, making the state's average salary with no federal perks, just like his neighbors. Yeah, for I think they just need to like limit the terms that they can serve and just continue to get fresh ideas in there. Because I mean, you get honestly, you just you sit in that ivory tower for so long, you have no idea what's going on in the real world. You need to come back in the real world and run your business, go back to your job, go back to your normal life, and not be a Washington elite. Because the longer they spend in Washington, the more they behave as an elite.
You got to pay your bills. They weren't paying their bills. And as you know, the Secretary General said, President Trump got $600 billion, now 640 to be exact. And
Yeah, it's just an advisory group. But they're being, so Richard, DOGE is not an official agency. True. They're being given a lot of access. They're looking at every single line item in the government's budget, which I'm happy to hear about. And I hope that, what President of Argentina did happens there. Let me bring that across here. Oop. Hang on one sec. Lost my... I had my AI do a translation, a voice translation of one of the almost meme-worthy videos that the president of Argentina had out there.
Tourism and
Here, let me go back. Here, let's take this. Jump out of the screen. All right. There we go. So, I mean, I hope DOGE does this, honestly.
Ministry of Tourism and Sports Abroad, Ministry of Culture Abroad, Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development, Ministry of Women and Gender and Diversity Abroad, Ministry of Public Works Abroad, even if you resist, Ministry of Science and Innovation Technology outside, Ministry of Labor, Employment and Social Security abroad, Ministry of Education, Indoctrination outside, Ministry of Transportation outside, Ministry of Health abroad, Ministry of Social Development. The work of politics is over. Long live freedom. Ministry.
So it seemed kind of weird, but that was the AI's attempt at translating in his voice into English what he's saying. But I mean, effectively just going through the different parts of government saying like, you know what, we don't really need this stuff. Let's cut it out of the system. And, Musk, even though he's saying these are the proposals, he's not going to be the one that acts on it. He will hand these off to the appropriate directors or secretaries that are in the cabinet. And it's on them to then execute. But he's already proposed that it's not an immediate dismissal, but people will be given, multi-year severance to allow them an opportunity to move on to something else, which will cost a lot, but I think it's, rather fair. Well, extremely fair, because it's not a very common occurrence that people get that type of a, send off, let's say.
I used to use the 400 billion number. He corrected me. He said, no, you actually got $641 billion put in, because I said you have to pay your bills. We were paying for NATO. And you know why I got the money? Because I asked for it. It wasn't that complicated. Europe is in for a fraction. And war with Russia is more important for Europe than it is for us. It's important for everybody, but it's more important for Europe than it is for us.
And you've said
we have a little thing called an ocean in between us.
You said you can end the war in 24 hours. You've even said you want to try to end it before you're sworn into office.
I'm trying to end it
You're
if I
actively
can.
trying to?
I am.
Have you talked to President Putin?
No, I have not.
You haven't talked to President Putin
No, I have
since
not.
you've been
You
elected?
mean, well, I don't want to say that, but I haven't spoken to him recently.
So you've spoken to President Putin since you've been elected?
I don't want to say that. I don't want to say anything about that, because I don't want to do anything that could impede.
This is interesting, right? Just trying to get a scoop, but it's like, I don't want to talk about this, but at the same point, I don't want to just outright continue down a path that's going to reveal something that it's going to impair the negotiations that are probably in play right now. And of course, the negotiations will be that hopefully a peace gets announced on the day of inauguration, shortly thereafter. Although I wish things would just stop escalating at this point. But hopefully there is an ending point coming soon to it all.
The negotiation.
But you
I want to
have
stop
talked
it.
about
Let me
the
tell you
other
what I
world
have talked
leaders.
about. Let me tell
Okay.
you. There are people being killed in that war at levels that nobody's ever seen before. You have to go back to the Second World War, and even that, if you take a look at, and you know what it is? It's the soldiers largely. The cities have been emptied out and demolished. The country has been demolished. If I won that election, which...
So the federal government, I think, stopped the space shuttle program, and so there's no other alternative at the moment for NASA. And I mean, Musk was contracted to reestablish that. So as long as NASA is being funded, I mean, they'll inherently have those contracts established with Musk for, SpaceX. The subsidies for electric vehicles were set up more for General Motors and Ford than they were for Tesla. Tesla's price points and the scale at which they can build things with their production lines, it allows them to do it much more efficiently than other companies, as well as the production of their batteries. So they're, in a position to be sustainable on that front. But yeah, they do get a good bit of government contracts on the SpaceX side. I think Tesla was like negligible. Any government grants that were given to them, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think I had it in my notes for a different live stream. But I mean, I guess on the surface, if you want to call out government contracts going, I mean, SpaceX has a pretty penny from the government.
You know how I feel about it. I won't get into it because we don't need to start that argument. I think it's an easy argument. It was really proven even more conclusively by the win that I had on this one. But
you did get a point, sir.
Well, that's your opinion, but I
okay.
disagree with it. Had I kept control, number one, Israel wouldn't have happened. Number two, Ukraine would have never happened. It would have never happened, Ukraine, Russia. But the number of people that are being killed, soldiers, young, beautiful soldiers.
He's not getting rid of electric vehicles, Richard. Trump's not getting rid of electrical vehicles. He's not pushing to have them become the only type of vehicle. I mean, think about it. Southeast portion of the United States, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, parts of Texas. Hurricane comes through. You need to evacuate. You got to, especially if you're in the southern tip of Florida, you have hundreds and hundreds of miles that you may potentially have to cross, and your electric vehicle has to stop and get charged for an hour once it runs out after 250 miles. What do you do then? It's not really going to work out. And I know that's just a few time a year type event, but it kind of highlights the use cases where electric vehicles do work, going back and forth to work in a smaller, travel radius versus, what traditional combustion engine vehicles are able to provide us with in terms of, safety and travel opportunities. So, I mean, it's just going to be market driven as those improve and as the price point gets good. That might be the direction everybody heads. But for right now, that's it's not the case.
Hundreds of thousands of people are being killed. And, it's very interesting. It's level, totally level. The battlefields, totally level.
Oh, wait, Richard, or Randy, excuse me, had a comment. Space program was stopped after Challenger. Oh, there was Challenger. Okay. Challenger happened because bean counters didn't listen to the engineers. Wall said it wasn't safe at those temperatures. Typical. Ooh, I did not remember that. I just was in school at that point in time. I remember watching it live because there was a teacher on board, so our teacher had it on. Well, a lot of the teachers had it on the screen. Then they quickly had to turn it off and redirect us towards something else. But Anyway.
You know what's happening? The only thing that stops a bullet, you know what it is a body, a human body. And the people that are being killed, hundreds of thousands on both sides. Russia's lost probably 500,000. And I was able to get hundreds of billions of dollars put into NATO just by a tough attitude. I said to the countries, I'm not going to protect you unless you pay. And they started paying. And that amounted to more than $600 billion. That's a big thing. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be fighting. They wouldn't have any money to fight. If they're paying their bills, and if I think they're doing a fair, and they're treating us fairly, the answer is absolutely.
Stopping points?
I'd stay with NATO.
But if not, you would consider the possibility of
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let's turn to the Middle East now, sir. There are still American hostages being held in Gaza.
Yeah.
You said this week that if the hostages aren't released before Inauguration Day, quote, there will be all hell to pay.
Correct.
What exactly did you mean? And do you still think that the hostages are alive?
I'm not a big believer in the fact that there are too many of them living, sadly, because I've seen the way they've been treated. I talk about the young girl that was pulled by her hair violently and thrown into the back of a car like she was a sack of potatoes.
You know what tech we really need to try to invest in is hydrogen as a fuel source for vehicles. There are some models out there, but creating the hydrogen required is very energy intensive right now. It's not a practical source. But the nice thing about hydrogen is that once it's burned, you're left with water, literally, because there's no carbon in the mix, right? Hydrocarbon, octane, whatever, hydrocarbons are C-chain molecules, and so they follow the combustion pattern that they end up as CO2 and H2O. But when it's just hydrogen that gets burned, the only byproduct that's left is water.
And I said, that's hatred. And then I said, how did that young girl do? Beautiful young girl just dragged by her hair. You remember, blood pouring all over her body. You can imagine the parents thrown into the back of a car.
The war in Gaza.
Yeah. But I know.
A law that could result in TikTok being banned. You
zipping through he was getting a little too detailed in his depictions. Probably not good for the live event, just skipping through that part. Interested in hearing this TikTok portion here, because the date that they had set out is coming up. I mean, it's early January, maybe mid-January. So is it going to get sold? I don't think the courts have put a pause on it yet or extended it at this point, but let's see what his comments are.
Relationship with President Xi. We have been communicating with each other.
Since you were elected?
Yes.
And you sent that message?
Since like 3 days ago. Yes, we communicate.
And you sent that message to him, don't invade Taiwan?
We didn't talk about that.
Hey, Ross, I was listening to some of the comments. People are talking about electric vehicles in there. I should have paused his thing a little bit earlier.
We talked about other things. But I have a very good relationship, and I hope he doesn't do it.
This week, a federal court upheld a law that could result in TikTok being banned. You said you're going to rescue TikTok when you get into office. Are you going to take steps to protect it?
Yeah, and as you know, I use TikTok very successfully in my campaign. I have a man named TikTok Jack. He was very effective, obviously, because I won youth by 30%. All Republicans lose youth. I don't know why. Maybe it's changing. And last time we were down 30% with youth. This time we're up 35% with youth. And I use TikTok, so I can't really, I can't totally hate it. It was very effective. But I will say this, if you do that, something else is going to come along and take its place. And maybe that's not fair. What they're doing, and really what the judge actually said was that you can't have Chinese companies. In other words, they have the right to ban it if you can prove that the Chinese companies own it. That's what the judge actually
said. So are you going to try to protect TikTok, just very quick, once you're in office?
I'm going to try and make it so that other companies don't become an even bigger monopoly.
Okay.
Because that's what happens.
We're winding down, and I know you have a plane to catch.
I do.
This is your first interview since you won the election.
Congratulations.
Yes,
I hope
congratulations to you.
I hope you do well with it.
Yes, and sir, I don't have to tell you this because you've talked about it. It comes at a time when the country is deeply divided. And now you're going to be leading this country for the next 4 years. For the sake of unifying this country, will you concede the 2020 election and turn the page on that chapter?
No. No.
He didn't even hesitate. Let's see how far he dives into this one.
Why would I do that? But let me just tell you, when
won't
you
ever
say the
concede.
country is deeply divided, I'm not the president. Joe Biden's the president.
But you're going to be the president.
No. I'm not the president. So when you say it's deeply divided, I agree. But Biden's the president, I'm not. And he has been a divider. And you know where he divided it more than anything else, and it probably backfired on him, I think definitely, is weaponization. When he weaponized the Justice Department and he went after his political opponent, me, he went after his political opponent violently because he knew he couldn't beat him. And I think it really was a bad thing. And it really divided our country.
Sir, Democrats have control of the White House now. They didn't in 2020. If they're going around stealing elections, why
When you
didn't
say
they do it
Democrats
this
have
time?
control now?
Of the White House.
Yeah.
So why didn't they steal this election? Since they have more power now.
Because I think it was too big to rig.
So you won't,
Too big to rig.
to the people who say that you're now
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to stop. I did not expect him to use the too big to rig comment on there. But I am surprised that she didn't try to ask a little bit more questions to, dig into that one.
directing your Justice Department to investigate 2020,
no,
and they
it-
want to move
I have
on.
very capable-
Is
I
that
think
a
Pam
good
is gonna
use
be
of
great.
precious resources?
By the way,
Is that what you
just so
want them
know-
to do?
Just so you know, I have the right to do that, but I'm not interested in that.
Oh, you're
I
not.
wanna-
You're not
I
gonna
wanna
do
do-
that.
I'm not interested. I have
Okay.
the absolute right. I'm the chief law enforcement officer. You do know that. I'm the president. But I'm not interested in that. You know what I'm interested in? Drilling and getting prices down and stopping people from pouring into our border that come from prisons and mental institutions.
Last two questions here. One of the things that made this campaign unprecedented and extraordinary were the horrific attempts against your life. 2 assassination attempts. Do you feel safe going into the White House
I do.
for the next 4 years? Why?
I have confidence in Secret Service. I know the people. I got to know a lot of them, and I have confidence. It was a bad moment. Something shouldn't have happened. But I have a lot of confidence, and they've really stepped it up. They were restricted from giving look, I'd do a rally, and you were at many of them, and I'd have 50,000 people. Joe would have a rally, and he'd have 30 people. And he had more Secret Service than me. My Secret Service was always asking for more manpower / women power. They were asking for more and more and more, and they couldn't get it. I'm not blaming them, really, because they were always fighting for more people, and they wouldn't get. Now, boy, do we have it.
I know it was hard on your entire family. What can people expect?
Yeah, Richard, petroleum production at an all-time high. Prices will be going up with these tariffs. Trick question. Better off now that he won, but no, we're definitely not better off than 4 years ago. Yeah. Interestingly, the production is all-time highs right now. If you look at the capital investment that the oil companies have put in over the last, let's say 4 years since COVID, it has significantly gone down. And so you need those capital investments to, bring new reserves online, keep that future pipeline going. And so forward looking, there is going to be a point that maybe there will be a squeeze, but the ability for folks to kind of innovate and recover more from existing sources has really, helped accelerate things. So when, Democrats take credit for like, oh, we're producing more now than ever, it has not been because they've opened things up and allowed for more operations. The oil industry has started to do more with less.
From the First Lady in this second administration? What role will she play? She obviously had her Be Best campaign.
She's very liked, loved, and she's very respected. And she's a very solid person. And she devotes a lot of time to helping children. You know what she does. And she's got her Be Best deal that is incredible what she's done. the one thing I say, whether it's First Lady or my children did such.
It's supply chain and cost pressures. Excuse me. The decrease in terms of production is related, to supply, and it's more correlated to withstanding the cycles that happen in oil markets, because there's massive, peaks, and then there's massive troughs that also unfold. And so how well you can withstand those low points is a pretty big deal to them at this point. So how do you make yourself resilient and resistant towards that? And, adjusting your books to, have better margins, to be able to turn a profit at a lower price point. I mean, all those things are goals that they have set out in front of them. And it's actually requiring them not to focus on, production as the primary measure of success, but profitability. So yeah, capital investment has decreased significantly across the board from all oil companies, but it's more driven on profitability and being able to withstand the cycles, the commodity cycle, than anything else. At least for U.S.-based oil companies. The national oil companies around the world, I'm sure there's other drivers, especially the OPEC nations. They've got a bit more control over things.
Such a good job, and they were treated very badly by the press and others. Ivanka was unbelievable what she did, and she all she wanted to do is one thing: get people jobs. She could have been the UN secretary. I said to her, she would have been unbelievable. She's got the whole package for that, including right up there. She's as smart as they. She didn't want. She said, "Daddy, I want to work on getting people jobs." She'd go to Walmart. She'd go to X such. She produced millions of jobs for people. Not glamorous. Most people didn't know she did it, and she was always being excoriated. And I said to my kids, "Don't come in. Don't come in." It's just
You said to them, "Don't."
I said to them, "Yeah." I said,
But will you miss having them there? Will it feel different? They were your top advisors.
I'll tell you what, I'll miss them, and they're really competent. But I say, just go have fun, do your business, do whatever you want to do, but don't come in, because no matter what they did such a great job. Although I have to say, Lara did a phenomenal job as the head of the Republican National Committee, along with Michael.
What will the First Lady's role be, do you think? Will she continue her Be Best campaign?
She's a very elegant First Lady. She was a very successful woman before that, in the modeling and other things, but in the modeling, very successful. The press, I can't say treated her unfairly. You know why? Because she's very popular. You would think if the press was unfair, like to me, the press was obviously unfair to me. The press, no president has ever gotten treated by the press like I was. And yet I got more votes than any Republican candidate in history. By far, it's not even close. So you say, what's that all about? The press has to straighten itself out, because honestly, it's lost all credibility. When that can happen, based on the press, I should have gotten no votes, none. And yet I got the highest number ever. And the reason is because I'm able to go on a show, even like yours, even though you're very hostile, I'm able to go on a show like yours. No, you are.
Well,
That's pretty, I'd say she was pretty tame compared to a lot of the other interviews that he's kind of gone through.
hopefully you thought it was a fair interview. We covered a lot of policy ground.
It's fair only in that you allowed me to say what I say. But, the answers, the questions are, pretty nasty. But look, because I've seen you interview other people like Biden. And
I've never interviewed President Biden.
When I say you, I'm talking metaphorically. I've seen.
Okay.
Okay. It's, I think there's like a bit of exhaustion. People are getting a little delirious here. People being Trump with the interview. So she's never interviewed Biden.
I've seen George Stephanopoulos interview Biden. And he's a tough interviewer. It's the softest interview. I've seen CNN interview him. They give these soft, what's your favorite ice cream? It's a whole different deal. I don't understand why. You would think the press would like to see strong borders, great education, a powerful military, so we have a country left, and all these different things. And somehow they don't want to see that.
Let me ask you, hopefully you think this interview was fair. We spent a lot of time talking about your policy and your second administration. I want to ask you, sir, one final.
Yeah, Michael, she's had some pretty significant, I guess, facial reactions, responses to just about everything that Trump has said along the way. Very eager to jump in, but I don't know. I'll give her a little bit of credit. She's refrained from it, but I mean, her body language is very clear that, and that's probably what he's keying in on and responding to, and not necessarily kind of the substance, but just the delivery, especially with the body language and the expressions that she's had.
Final question. What do you want to say to Americans who didn't support you in this campaign?
I'm going to treat you every bit as well as I have treated the greatest MAGA supporters. There's never been anything like MAGA in the history of this country. These people are so dedicated to making America great again. It's very simple. And I'm going to treat them just the same as I treat MAGA. We're going to treat everybody good. We want success for our country. We want safety for our country. You know, our country is under threat, as you know. We have a tremendous threat militarily because of the power of weapons and weaponry. It's a tremendous threat. Nobody talks about it, but it's a tremendous threat.
I am Divine said that's a lie. Are you talking about somebody else's comment up there, or what Trump just mentioned about our military strength?
I want to treat everybody the same. I want to treat them well. And at the end of this 4 years, and I have a big head start because I was there for 4 years fairly recently. A lot of bad things were done during the 4 years that I wasn't there, and mostly in what they've done in terms of our reputation overseas. Our reputation is so bad, so shot. I got to bring it back, and I also have to bring back civilization to our country. Our country is a crime pot, and we have to get rid of crime. We have so many things to do. We have to do the prices. We have to do all of that. But we have to get the criminals out of our country. We have to bring down crime. People have to be able to walk across the street and buy a loaf of bread without being shot. And that's going to happen. But what I say to them is, I love you, and we're going to all work together, and we're going to bring it together. And you know what's going to bring it together? Success. I saw that just prior to COVID coming in, I had polls that were the highest anyone. McLaughlin and Fabrizio said, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, if they came back from the dead and they ran as president and vice president, couldn't beat you, sir. We were doing so well. And I was getting along with the left. Let's call it the left. We'll be nice. Okay, we're just going to call it. But I was getting along with people that you would consider liberal or progressive, as they like to say, at levels that I never thought was possible. And you know what it was? Success. Success was bringing the country together, and that's what I want to do.
We'll leave it there unless you'd like to say anything more.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the honor
Very much.
of
Great
this
honor.
first interview.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching.
Well, that was nice how it concluded there. You know, again, the expressions were pretty strong, but still, overall, I think it was conducted pretty well. I mean, as good as it can be. You know, the end, it kind of went in the wrong direction there when he said that she interviewed Biden. She responded like, I've never interviewed Biden. And he's talked about speaking metaphorically. I think he spent so much time delivering some of these lines or some of these like kind of canned statements over the past year as part of the election cycle that it just rolls right out. And so it's, you know, that's something that needs to get undone and, you know, focus on the task at hand. And when you start meeting with the media again on these new challenges that you're going to take on, being able to directly connect and talk to those or speak to those as to what's coming up. But yeah, anyway, guys, check out website politicalcow.com. I published the stream notes there. It was kind of light for tonight, but on the other ones, I usually have a lot of content that we kind of run through. But check that out. Ground News. Let me bring that up again. Highly recommend. I mean, at least go sign up for an account. But if you're interested in getting full access to all the features, kind of like you see here, the different aspects of factuality or ownership of the publications that are putting out different news stories, so forth. It helps break down all the different angles that are being brought to the table. Sometimes left-leaning publications leave out certain points, right-leaning publications leave out certain points, getting a holistic picture of things. Use the link in the pinned chat, 15% off, but as you probably see here, they're still running the 50% off promotion when I'm signed in here. Anyway, I appreciate you guys. Like and subscribe. I think it's about time for me to take a break here. I hope everybody has a good Friday coming up, that you got something good planned for the weekend up ahead. So y'all take care.
Darkness falls, truth emerges. PoliticalCow unveils the lies. Behind the screen, wisdom surges, lighting up hate with her eyes. In the shadows, secrets lurk. She exposes, she ignites. With every post, she does the work, unmasking darkness, revealing lights. PoliticalCow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. With every post, she does the work, unmasking darkness, revealing lights. Oh, PoliticalCow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. Her voice cuts through, stark and raw, shattering deception, breaking the law. Icons crumble, empires fall. She stands tall, fierce and cold. Her voice echoes a thunderous call. In the chaos, her strength unfolds. False prophets scatter, truth ascends. The world watches, mesmerized. PoliticalCow's battle never ends.